Himayan? Absent. Patel? Absent. Yalmanchili? Absent. Luthra? Absent. Acosta? Absent. Borges? Resigned. Okay. Lopez?
Present.
Okay. Hashimi? Absent. Duke? Absent. Torres?
Present.
Holmes?
Present.
Hurst?
Present.
Fuchs?
Present.
Musenmeyer?
Present.
Freehafer?
Present.
Federico?
Present.
Sorry, Yeah, I said that right. My bad. Pullman? Absent. Richmond?
Present.
Vasquez?
Present.
DeMarla?
Here.
Mittal? All right. 27 out of 41. Quorum is verified.
Conti is no longer, so yeah, thank you. All righty. Is the live stream up? Awesome. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Take a look at last meeting's minutes, and I'll take a motion. Chair Temple.
Move to approve last meeting's minutes.
There's been a motion to approve last meeting's minutes. Are there any objections? Seeing none, they stand approved. Approval of the agenda. Take a look at today's agenda, and with that, I'll take a motion. Vice Chair Kringle.
Move to approve today's agenda.
There's been a motion to approve today's agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing none, they stand approved. Open forum. Are there any non-senators wishing to speak during open forum today? Seeing none. Announcements from the student body president. President Greenaway.
Hello, Senate. I hope all is well. This week, we kicked off the 2025-2035 campus master plan process to outline potential areas of expansion on campus. So we just started, but I'll provide more updates as this process is continued. Additionally, members of cabinet have also been working with student success and well-being on updated pillars. So this is an ongoing process, but the goal is to make sure that the pillars and goals of SSWB relate more directly to students. More details to come on a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas vigil next Wednesday. And finally, thank you to everyone that attended the Maxwell Frost Roundtable. Unfortunately, I was out of town, but I heard that the event was a success.
Are there any questions for President Greenaway? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, all right. Announcements from student body vice president from President Greenaway.
So Colby will be joining us a little bit later. He's in class right now, but he just wanted to say hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. This week, he had the Faculty Senate Student Success Council to talk about the new software SSWB is implementing for academic advising called EAB. Lots of work going on in SSWB. I see over there, Dr. Frame. It's great. And finally, the Agency and Department Strategic Planning Board will be meeting on Friday, February 23rd at 12 p.m. in the Charge-On Chamber.
Are there any questions regarding the student body vice president's announcement? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Comptroller's report, Comptroller Kane.
Good evening, everyone. From me, I'm going to quickly read off the CRT and FAO balances and then give a little bit of information about the budget, since I was informed that about 20% of senators attended the information session. So I would love to give a little bit more context before we begin to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So the CRT balance is $140,558.12 with reversions of 0.79%. The FAO balance is $58,667.09 with no reversions. So just to explain what this process is going to look like this year. So our process this year is entirely different from previous years. In previous years, the process led to a lack of stability, as seen by a $3 million decrease in the budget that we had last year. And the reason for that destabilization was the fact that all money that wasn't spent in the previous year was rolled over to the following year. That no longer works, as we see from last year. And In addition to this really only worked because we had increasing enrollment. Now that enrollment is leveled, we need to have a stable budget. So to explain how this process works this year, funds are essentially put into two categories. First of all, we have recurring funds that are from the projected activity and service fee revenue every year. And those funds are being used to fund pretty much everything that you think of as a recurring expense, salaries, operation expenses, anything that's a normal recurring expense. The second category of funds that you'll see are one-time expenses, which are used for one-time projects as necessary. This year, we do have a very large pot of money that's as part of that one-time expense category. So as you'll see throughout the hearing, we put that into a couple of different categories. We'll never see a money amount that is as large as we had this year for one-time expenses. This was just because of the transition. So that's pretty much it from me.
Are there any questions for Comptroller Kane? Seeing none, thank you. Announcements from the Chief Justice, from Chief Justice Silva.
Hey, Senate, just a few announcements from me tonight. Seat 7 is open on our branch. The application can be found on Night Connect. Tell your friends, coworkers, and qualified people to apply. And the judicial branch is officially Title IX trained. We were trained since last Wednesday by a member of Office of Institutional Equity. It was Lauren Wallace, and she was very great. So yeah, we're very excited about that next chapter of our initiatives.
All right. Are there any questions for Chief Justice Silva? Seeing none, thank you. Announcements from the Supervisor of Elections, Supervisor Myers.
Good evening, y'all. Just want to remind you of some things I've said before, but if you would like to run for re-election, candidacy application packets are due in less than 7 days now. And then obviously that link is going to be on Night Connect, but it's also in the minutes. There are 5 info sessions left. I'm going to add a couple just based on student need, but those will be updated in the Night Connect. But based on what's scheduled right now, we have 5 left. And then the next one's going to be on Zoom at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So depending on how late you get out of here, come join me for that. Brody emailed you all last week messages to send to the RSOs you work with about running for candidacy. So if you haven't done that already, please do so as soon as possible. And then if you have any questions about like the info we ask you to write up, just give me an email. Once again, if you'd like to help EC table next week as it is declaration of candidacy, that would be awesome. I have the link to the Google form, and I would especially appreciate it for those of you that go to the auxiliary campuses to help with that, as you would be like a student there and also be able to give us a little bit more insight onto their student experience. And we have 1 presidential ticket so far. It's pretty typical that they don't put in their application till last minute, so that was exciting to see. And yeah, if y'all have any questions, let me know.
Are there any questions for Supervisor Myers? Seeing none, thank you. To those who just walked in, I will get you after my announcements. Hello, everyone. Please be good. We have some very important people in the building. Hello. Y'all wave at them. They're back here. Hello. Ask questions. This is important. This is an important task, but should be approached professionally, but still keep in mind that this is a learning experience. I know that a budget this big can seem intimidating. However, asking questions can help it seem a little less intimidating. And this may, for a lot of you, may not be the first time you'll see it. And it's better to go in next session knowing a little bit more than you did before. And with that, my office, ELA Richmond and I had a meeting with Dr. Dosal and Dr. Frame and another individual from the Division of Student Success regarding a student government-wide advising survey. This is to gauge students' perspective of advising. So ELA Richmond and I will be working on that. We'll be corresponding with the Division of Student Success back and forth, making sure that the survey is not leading and it it reaches requirements of what a survey should look like to gain great results. So we will be keeping you guys updated on what that's going to look like, and we are working with professionals on that as well. So that should be going out really soon. Not really soon. I would say within the next month or so, but it just depends on how those conversations go, what the survey looks like. And this is just to improve advising overall. Dr. Dosal did see the College of Business's resolution based off of advising, and they took it really seriously. So I just want to applaud COBA and just you all as senators for passing that legislation, because without that, this survey probably wouldn't have come into fruition, the idea of it. So I just want to applaud you all, and I will definitely be keeping you updated on the development of that. Before I do dismissals and resignations, does anyone have any questions regarding that initiative at all? No? Okay. Dismissals. I hereby dismiss former Senator Kairos Rivera, and I hereby resign Tyler Borges. Are there any questions regarding my report as a whole? Seeing none, Chair Dadalos? Oh, she went to restroom. Okay. Chair Patel?
President voting.
So noted at 7:16 p.m. Disar Matal.
President voting.
So noted at 7:16 p.m. Fiscal Committee report, CRT Committee, Chair Samillo. Not here. Sorry, Vice Chair Kringle, go ahead.
Hey y'all, so Kylie actually was birthday tonight, so she's not here, but I'll read this in the minutes. So last meeting on February 5th, we approved allocation 55, 484, 536, 537, 538, 539, 540, 541, 542, 543, 544, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, and 600, 601, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we postponed allocation 55, 5, 52.
All righty. Who's doing FAO report? Okay, Whitson. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know Elise wasn't here.
No, it's okay. Let me announce it first. FAO Committee, Vice Chair Whitson.
So we approved 5599, 5500, 55101, 102, and 103. We postponed 5595, 5598, 55104. And that's it for me.
All righty. Chair Dadalos.
President voting.
So noted at 7:18 p.m. Are there any questions regarding the FAO Committee or CRT report? Seeing none. ORS Committee, Chair Rose.
Last meeting, we saw one post-funding review and 3 VPFs. We postponed all of them.
Are there any questions for Chair Rose? Seeing none. All righty. All righty. I hereby listen or yield. I'm freezing today. I hereby yield the chair to Chair McClellan. Bye, y'all.
Hello, everybody. We are now at fiscal legislation, Fiscal Bill 5537, the 2024 to 2025 Activity and Service Fee Budget Bill. So we're going to pull up a presentation, and it will help us go over what we're about to do. For those of you that were in the room previously, you already had this rundown, so I'll make it quick. And then we'll get into each entity. So give us 1 second to pull up the presentation. If you guys go in your Teams files, you should be able to see under the agendas and then budget bill docs, the presentation that I'm talking about. It will be not the 23, but the 24 to 25 Activity Service Fee Budget Senate Special Session document, PowerPoint. And I'll wait until I get like nods, thumbs up, looking my general way saying, move on already. Oh, here we go. Well, we can get started real quick without it. Most of you will have it pulled up, and it'll be up on the second slide shortly. So yeah, the activity and service fee under Florida law, it is the law that says that activity and service fee can be collected and only used for the benefit of students, essentially. No discrimination. It's open to all students. The fund may not benefit activities that have an admission fee unless it is a student government funded concert or something of this like. An allocation expenditure is determined by the Student Government Association of the university, and that is us. That is what we're here doing today. If you move on to slide 3, for those of you that have it pulled up, and we'll get it up shortly. What the activity and service fee looks like this year. So for every single credit hour that we pay for tuition, non-virtual students don't pay the activity and service fee, but for all the rest of us, we pay $11.67 per credit hour. Times that, times how many credit hours you're taking that semester, times all of our students, and that is how much we're going to get. So the total for this year is going to be $18.8 million in our operational or recurring budget and $6.5 million in our non-recurring budget. And thank you, Comptroller Kane, for going over the distinction between the two. But to reiterate, this $6.5 million is over time all of the excess money that we've had that hasn't been accounted for. We're accounting for it now starting this year. That is why we have done this separation of the budget. And that is going to be the first and only time we'll see a number this big. Typically going forward, our non-recurring expenses, our budget should be anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million on a very good year if we have that, or bad year if you consider that we get that money from not spending our previous budget. So we give and trade. The next slide will be A&SF funded areas, and that's what I'm going to refer to as our entities. We have all of the different branches, commission, and committees of student government, all of our departments, and our SG affiliated agencies. So we have CAB, Homecoming, Late Nights, Court, Nighthon, Volunteer UCF, sports clubs, but we do have Multicultural Student Center, and that one is different because it has pro staff. It's technically under a different department. That agency also gets funding from the Ginsburg Center, so you'll see professional staff being paid for out of that budget. That isn't the only agency that will have professional staff. All the departments will have it, but no other areas besides them and MSC. I'm gonna move on to the next one. UCF activity and service fee budgeting process. So what does the committee do? What have we been doing all the way up until the moment where you're seeing our budget now, right? So the budget committee meetings begin in October at the latest, and we begin to meet, talk amongst ourselves for if there's anything different that needs to be addressed in this year's budget cycle. We send out our budget packets, meet with our entities and make sure they're filling them out all right, and then we get our budget packets back. And in December, during the winter break, the first week of winter break, we meet for our budget hearings. Typically 3 days we allot for it just in case, but over the past 2 years, we've been thankful to get out at 2 days, not 3 days, because those are 9 to 5 days where we meet with all of our entities. We talk about what they're requesting from us. We talk amongst ourselves and refer to the entities, ask questions to make sure that we're getting the best budget that we can present to you, the Senate, with our recommendation for what it should look like that is the best to benefit students. And then we come to today. Special session happens in February typically. And then we go over the approval of it, and it gets signed by our student body president, our senior student affairs officer, Dr. Frame, and the university president. All right. Looks like we almost had it. We're going to keep going. So now we're on to slide 6. So real quick, any questions on what I've said? Does everybody have the slideshow? Look off of a friend's. Yes.
Just real quick, if you guys go to the general to the teams page, I've linked it in there.
Ease of access. We love it. Okay. Materials, procedures. So the things that you should have in front of you while we're talking about this and as we go forward is access to the actual fiscal bill, 5537. That's where the proviso language is going to be. And we'll talk more about the proviso language when we finally approve the bill. But we're going to talk about the Excel budget for the most part, and that's what we're going to be referencing. Awesome. Can we get to slide 6? Okay. The Excel budget document also should be linked in your committee or your resources, and that is going to have past 3 years budget, the request that was given to the budget committee, what the budget committee approved, and then in a blank column that will be filled in as we go along is going to be what you guys approve. So we'll be able to see all of them for reference. Budget request packets for all the entities and their presentations should also be in there. The budget packets are going to give you a deeper, breakdown. So if you see operations, for example, every entity is going to have operations. You're going to see that. You're going to be like, what does this mean? Why is there this money in there? You go into the budget packet, you go into their operations, you can see a breakdown. That's what that's for. You can see a breakdown of their OPS, their professional staff they have, and all the project tabs that they have, and they'll name like Pegasus Palooza. You'll see a bunch of other stuff like that. The presentations are the presentations that the entities provided and presented for the budget hearings. So that's also a lot of good stuff. That'll give you more insight about what that entity does, how they benefit students, what they were telling us would be good to see, what they were telling us would be bad to see, what they were saying they would cut, add, all that good stuff. So those presentations are really good to pull up if you ever have any questions or want to look deeper. And then consideration of the bill. Right now, we're doing our budget overview. This is right now, I'm explaining how things are working. I'll have a moment for you guys to question myself or the president or the comptroller or anybody that was a member of the committee. If you had any general questions on certain things about why things are looking like this, what is this, how, who, why, what, and also the entities present. And then we're going to review them one by one. And we'll have the slides for that up there as well. And then we'll have our debate and voting. Next slide, please. So materials and procedures continued. So basically, we are going to have the motions that you guys are going to make to amend it is going to be, I motion to amend budget line 57, adding $30,000, subtracting $30,000. Or you could just say, I wish to amend it to $30,000, right? You can amend it to what the number should be, or you can say add or subtract, same thing, as long as you get what you want to do right. The motions don't need to add and subtract funds to even out, in a sense that if I'm adding $30,000 to line 57, and that's all I'm doing, that means that, because the budget committee provided you guys with a flat budget, it's all of the $18.8 million, we allocated 18.8, right? So if you add $30,000, you're now at $18.8 million and $30,000 on top of that, right? We're over budget by that much, right? So by the end of all the motions, we're not going to be approving the budget until we get it all the way down. We find where is that $30,000 coming from, right? Because it currently belongs somewhere, right? It's not just an extra $30,000. We can say, oh, I had $50 million because I want to fund everything. We can't do that, right? We have $18.8 million only. As I mentioned, we're not going to approve it if there's any funds left over. We're also not going to approve it if there's any funds left unallocated. And then amendments that seem controversial may receive specific time for debate. And then we will have the vote. If there's no debate, there's nothing, you guys, I say there's been a motion. Are there any objections? Nobody says anything. We go into voting on that, okay? After all 18 entities are seen, we approve the Excel budget. And then after that Excel, like what we see there, we've approved, we've moved all the money. Then we vote on the actual fiscal bill that has the proviso language and everything. And then we go home. Important terms to know. Next slide, please. Salaries and benefits, that's professional staff. OPS, that's basically students, the hourly pays. Your committee chairs, my position, Sierra's position, any other like front desk workers anywhere, that's all student positions. OCO, you're not going to see that in the operational reoccurring budget, but you'll see that in the one-time expenses. That's equipment, furnitures, other tangible personal property, and non-consumable, non-expendable, like I'm buying a hard asset, right? I'm buying a table, a printer, I'm buying something of that, I'm renovating a space. And then revenue is obviously revenue, right? So we have our SG Ticket Center. You're going to see revenue there. You're going to see revenue in a few other places. Next slide. Important considerations. Despite the increase in our reoccurring budget, our operational budget, you'll hear me refer to the operation reoccurring. That's the normal budget. Even though we have an increase of that and an introduction of non-reoccurring funds, so technically if you add the two together, we're at like $25 million total. money is still very tight. We have minimum wage increasing in September of every year in the middle of our budget. So we have to account for that. And the way that we're doing it is we're increasing all OPS positions up $1, and that accounts for $300,000 every year that we have to pay for. And there are still 2 more years. So we have this year's $300,000 that we had to pay for and $600,000 to come over the next 2 years. We also have deferred maintenance on activity and service fee operated buildings. We fund the building that the RWC and the student union. Those are both buildings that we are in charge of and fund in our budget. And those account for a large portion of our non-reoccurring expenses. We'll get more into that at the very end. At the end, we will see our non-reoccurring budget separately, even though we're going to see a lot of familiar entities. Not all of them, but some of them. And then this is the first year that we are budgeting separately for all the reasons the comptroller said earlier. These are funds that have been left over in our accounts. And once we spend it, we're not going to have this money. The $6.5 million is not going to be here next year. I may have mentioned it earlier, but it's going to look more like 500,000 to 1.5 million on a good year that we'll have in there to give out as one-time expenses. Any questions on anything I have just said? Seeing none, we're going to get started. Next slide, please. So now, if you wanted to pull up budget packets, you're going to pull up the activity and service fee business office one. I also put in the budget lines from the Excel document up here in this table. You'll see the lines should correspond. So line 2, salaries and benefits, should be line 2, salaries and benefits on the Excel. And when you're looking at the Excel for budget lines, use the actual typed in numbers on the left-hand side. Don't use the Excel lines. These lines and the ones on the first column, not the actual Excel document ones. Okay, so important things to consider, right? These are the bullet points. I'll put things and I'll talk about it as well. So the business office and the SG Ticket Center have been, okay, little grammatical thing there, my bad, but they've been traditionally one entity. But this year we have separated them into 2 for ease of consideration, because the Ticket Center has the purchase of the tickets, the revenue, also has OPS for the students that run the Ticket Center, and the Activity and Service Fee Business Office also has its own operation on the 2nd floor. So we've separated those 2 for ease of access. That's the next slide. If you look at the R&R, the repair and replacement line, so that's lines 5 and 6, right? Those ones are now going to be supplemented by our non-reoccurring expense fund. So you're going to hear a lot more about that later. That's where we're funding a lot of our deferred maintenance from. But we are going to, moving forward, fund it through there. So as you can see, if you look at 2023 to 2024, we have 300,000 in line 5 and 413,000 in line 4. But now you see line 6 is empty; it's 0. So that's why. And then R&R for the specific projects, that's going to be line 5. It contains our funds that we put away for future minimum wage. So we have certain things in there. There's like a RWC turf field maintenance that we're funding through there. And there's like 1 or 2 other things like that nature. But then there's going to be around $250,000 also in this account that we've set aside. Duke.
Present voting.
So noted at 7:34 p.m. So for, as I was saying, the 250,000 for next year, that means that next year, the $300,000 that needs to be put for minimum wage, we've already covered most of it. So we're doing a little bit of strategic planning, making sure that next year is not going to just be a huge cut. We have to find all this money somewhere, and our budget didn't go up. It only went up like $50,000 or $100,000, okay? So as of right now, any questions on anything to do with the activity service fee business office? Yes.
So for operations, what did we cut from last year's budget to bring it down?
Dr. Posey, would you like to? Whenever there is an entity president, I'll defer to them. Yeah, you're good there.
Okay, for fiscal year 25, we're going to reduce the material and supplies. Originally, we requested 12,000. That's going to be cut to 7,000. Equipment rental, this is with the caveat. I requested 9,500, but it's going to be reduced to 6,800, and that is a service that we have no control over the cost. The same with the telephone service. Excuse me. Originally, I had requested 15,000, but it's reduced to 10. And with the IT, there was very little that we could shave from that, and it was only about $920.
That answer your question? Okay, good. Any other questions while we're looking at activity and service fee business office? By the way, we can come back always at the end once we've looked over all of our entities. That's typically how it goes. There's not much on a first time because you want to know what everything is. And then at the end, there might be some play that might be wanted, but that's all good. We can always come back. Don't think we've moved on and that's it. So next slide. Now we're going to be talking about the SG Ticket Center, also under the business office, just separated here. This is going to be the first year. So as you can see, there's OPS to cover the students that run it. There's operations. The operations, $2.8 million of that is going to be the purchase of tickets. You'll see that is also estimated in the revenue. It's also going to be 2.8 million, so it cancels itself out, and we are left with just a little bit of operational costs and mostly OPS costs. Are there any questions for the SG Ticket Center? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Campus Activities Board. So OPS went up, and I should have mentioned this earlier. Well, we already have minimum wage, right? So OPS went up for everything, or all entities. So you'll see that. And then funds were distributed to various places to give back some of what was cut last budget cycle. Another trend we will see, we were able to give back funds here and there to kind of make up for the giant cuts that were last year. Are there any questions currently regarding CAB? Go ahead. You may.
So first to clarify, so when the column that says A&SF, but A&SF committee, that's what you essentially gave them, not just what they requested, just to clarify, right?
Yes, so that's what the Activity and Service Fee Committee, that's what we approved in our budget hearings. There wasn't enough space, but Activity and Service Fee Committee recommendation to Senate. This is what we're recommending the budget should look like. We went and took all the requests, because if we took all of the requests, if you're on the Excel document and you see the very bottom, you can see the totals, the requests weren't 18.8 on the money, right? They were a little bit up. So we trimmed here, trimmed there, gave back here, gave back there. And this A&SF committee column is a balanced budget that we're recommending to you. And then you're awesome. Go ahead.
This is just a clarification. When there's like an increase from like the past year to the next year, are we like allowed to ask like why was there an increase? Because like, and there's like three rows where there's an increase. So are we just able to be like, hey, can we just ask what the increase was for?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think it's fine arts, impact, and special events all increase. Am I able to ask why they did increase?
Yeah, sure. If there's any committee members that want to take it, President Greenaway.
I could just say kind of overall for a lot of the agencies with CAB, Homecoming, majority of the increases, and Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, are just production costs being increased in terms of prices going up. But I'm not sure if Shane or anyone else at OSI had anything to add.
I would tell you, and this will come into a play with a lot of the agencies in a lot of areas, the cost of doing business and the cost of services has continually increased. Production has increased huge. The cost of police services has been a significant increase. Cost of facilities has all increased on us in the process. So a lot of those are wrapped into those expenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just to build off of both of that, I'll just say that on top of being cut $3 million for the budget that we're working on right now, the 2023 to 2024, all these agencies took big hits. Every part of the budget took big hits, and they took big hits going into rising costs, right? So we gave money back because first of all, they had to reduce just normally, and that's just there, right? That they're also, the money doesn't go as far anymore. So we want to give back to be able to hopefully keep that going on, because a lot of stuff like, police costs and such, that's just safety stuff, right? Any other, yes, go ahead.
Is there a reason we cut all of the marketing budget from 2023 to now? Like the entirety of marketing is gone.
I'm pretty sure that moved. You'll see stuff like that. You also see speakers line 29 is 0. So we keep zeros for 3 years and then we remove the column. But a lot of times we just combine budget lines. So that just got combined with operations. As you can see, we went from 8,000 to 17,000, not fully combining the two because, but like those were combined. Temple.
Just a point of information as well. I do believe that you should have access to the individual budget packets for each agency and each department. So you'll be able to see those movements within those budget packets.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Any further questions? We will move on. Homecoming. If there's nothing specifically outstanding, I'm going to say typical increase. Typical increase means OPS, meaning we gave back here to operations. We gave back there to Knights Got Talent. We gave somewhere in their budget, we gave back so that they could be able to keep production going, right? So if you have any specific questions on a budget line or an increase, please feel free to let me know, but I'm not going to break down every single one or we'd be here for 3 hours just with me explaining. Oh, yes. Sorry.
I'm assuming we got rid of the step show last year. That's why it's no longer being funded.
Yeah, so it was not there last year. Like it's just going to carry over. If you go on the Excel budget, you'll also see some zeros and you'll see some movement and stuff.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no further questions or anything for homecoming, we're going to move on to Knights of the Round Table. Still the same stuff that you'll see here to there. Okay, seeing nothing, no hands, we're going to move on once again to Nighthon. Get out of here fast. Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on once again. Now we're at late nights. We're going to see typical increases as well. You'll see operations went up. You're going to see events went up. Programming stayed the same. Marketing stayed the same. All right. Seeing no questions, we're going to move on once again. MSC. This is what I was saying earlier. Typical increase. The only agency with professional staff. It's not an OSI agency. Budget line 79 was combined with budget line 80. So you'll see that there as well. Okay. Any questions? Okay, see. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Is there a reason why the operations cost went down from their requested 50? Wait, is there a reason why it was increased from 2023 to 2024 till now?
Yeah, as you see, it was 39,000 for the current year budget that we're having. They requested 54, but we cut that down by 10K. I mean, it's the same reason why we increased every other agency as well. We gave back a little bit more to allow them to do more with what than what they were given for last year, because like we cut down to bare bones with this 3 million cut last year. So anything we can give back for a little bit more breathing room with operational expenses, with events and such.
So I know that MSC is partially funded from the A&SF budget and from another part of the budget. So can you just elaborate or explain to me why the request was $150,056 and A&SF committee granted or recommended $102,836. Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Are you talking about OPS?
Yeah, line 76.
Yeah. So we had a little bit of a discussion with the entity and amongst ourselves because the way that OPS works for them is also different. So you'll see typically if you're looking inside of the budget packets that hours, weeks, generally pay for student directors and other positions, they're very, very similar. But because this one's not an OSI agency, they do it a little bit different. And they also do receive funding from another source. So we take that into consideration with how much we're going to give them. Any other questions for MSC? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the Office of Student Involvement. We're going to see typical increases, but we're also going to see a lot more here. And this is going to be because we give money back to certain budget lines in an attempt for like non-main campus areas and graduate outreach, non-traditional nights, because OSI funds a lot of stuff outside of just main campus programming. And those areas took a lot of the hit last year. So for UCF students that are not just on our main campus, we wanted to be able, and non-traditional and graduate students and stuff, we wanted to be able to give them some funds as well. So you'll see a larger portion of increases here. Any questions? Yes.
For the sign language interpreters, I realized that what the request is what we gave them, but did we lose somebody? Is that why it went down by $1,500 from last year?
Shane, if you want to elaborate, but I'm pretty sure what you were saying is that you just did not use the full 6,000. You were not on track to. This was more a way to save money because it's not needed. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Recreation and Wellness Center. So you'll see the typical increase with salaries, benefits, people get raises, OPS, minimum wage. OCO is going to be removed eventually, but it's zeros because we have to keep it for 3 years. Operations, we have utilities because we pay for the building. So utilities expenses account for a really big portion. So you're going to see an increase there. You're also going to see repair and replacement. We moved that into the activity and service fee business office of repair and replacements. We're going to consolidate R&R into one place on our budget in the reoccurring operational budget and one place on the non-reoccurring. So it's going to be under the business office for our specific projects and our contingencies. And then we're going to have our reserve accounts, the R&R lines through our non-reoccurring budget. You're going to see the contingencies and then project lines there as well. Any questions for the Rec and Wellness Center? Okay. Seeing none. Sports Club Council. Typical increase, you'll see programs did go up by 7,000. We're going to get some new clubs. I believe a pickleball club is included in that. So pickleball, it's awesome. It's pretty cool. We gave back some money in operations so that they could do a little bit more there with their operating of the clubs. So are there any questions specifically for sports clubs? Okay. Oh, yes.
All right. This is like a general question regarding that. Is there a time at like when, like there's only so many people who can join like a club in a sense, like, is there a point where some clubs are removed because of like the people enrollment, like in like those clubs, this goes away? Because I'm just ensuring that we don't have like a sports club that is not like fulfilling its full potential in a sense.
There is classifications for sports clubs. I'll let Comptroller Kane elaborate, or was I? Oh yeah. Yeah, they have their own management of that. They have classifications for sports clubs. Certain clubs that reach X requirements get X amount, because the programs that that fund of $267,800, that is like their own for Senate, like you have FAO and CRT, they allocate money out for clubs to practice, to go join tournaments, to go do stuff like that.
It's within its own organization.
Yeah, they have their own very intricate function. Like yeah. So yeah, they have good management. Any questions for sports clubs? Seeing none. Student Government Budget Committee. This is my thing. Yeah, the only thing that went up was minimum wage. It's same as it's been, just a little bit more for minimum wage. Any questions for me? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on. Election Commission. So we approved as requested, and we were able to give them back their supervisor of elections, or the assistant supervisor pay, because we had to cut that last year. It's back again. Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to go to Student Government Executive Branch. Typical budget changes. We'll see the spring event was increased to allow us to purchase more tickets for Universal Nights. Any questions? Yes.
For operations, the reasoning behind the $1,100 just like drop in how much we gave them.
President Greenaway.
I think it was just the committee was looking for areas to make decreases across the board. So it was something that we just volunteered up.
Mm-hmm. Any further questions for myself or any of our executive members? Yes, go ahead.
When it comes to professional development, you have $5,500. Can you elaborate how much goes to training, how much goes to development, how much goes to retreats?
Yeah, so that was where we took the $1,000 decrease. So now it's $4,500. If that's updated on the spreadsheet. So a lot of it goes towards our retreats. So we do a summer retreat, we do a fall retreat, and a spring retreat. All about, the summer retreats really focused on getting to know each other and really focusing on the goals of the year and really long-term strategic planning. The executive cabinet really works hand in hand every single day together. So it's really important to develop those relationships from the start. And then some of that other stuff, some other things that come from that budget are this year we went to the Big 12 Student Government Conference. So that was an opportunity to learn from other Big 12 student governments about what they're doing and how we can collaborate and get some ideas from each other. So that was kind of the majority of that budget.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Student Government Judicial Branch. So you're going to see typical OPS increase, but we did increase operations. That's going to be budget line 146 to allow them to put on more outreach events, to do more, because those have been very popular, and we thought it would be great to see them be able to do more. Any questions? Seeing none. Student Government Legislative Branch. So we're going to see typical budget increases, but I believe if you also look on the budget Excel, this might be the only entity that actually took an overall decrease, and that is because there's a decrease to registration and travel, taking out funds typically left after conference registration and travel committee allocates for the fiscal year. So like the leftover for your CRT fund. Yes.
Did the last, 4 lines get combined somewhere else?
Yes, those are all combined now in operations.
Okay.
Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
If you can you elaborate where the budget line 152, you said that there was an overage that was left over. Can you elaborate where that went? Or if not,
So it's not where you see the 540,000 for this year that we took 30,000 and put it somewhere else per se. It's more of we were over, and when Speaker Holmes was creating the budget, there was a decrease. We cut some there, and then also I suppose at the end at some point we said we can cut here. Also, the same way that exec offered up a little bit of money, Senate offered up a little bit of money so that we could fund a lot of other areas as well, because we did not think that that would make a big impact on students, that the impact on students there would be minimal, and we could do so much more as well, giving it to like homecoming, give it to CAB, other agencies as well.
Also, another reason it won't make a huge impact is that CRT always typically has money left over, and they always kind of give to FAO. So just that was a place where, if, like Chair McClellan said, if we cut it, it wouldn't make a big impact.
Any questions regarding, well, your budget? Seeing none. Student legal services. We see typical increases here, and they were able to now get a new case management software program. So that's cool. Any questions for SLS? Seeing none, we're making record time. Student union, typical increases, utilities, professional staff, OPS. Any questions regarding, yes, student union?
For maintenance and custodial, we cut $84,000. Why?
Yes, Rick, would you like to take that?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So facilities has gone to what they're calling a service level agreement, and basically we will now be treated as other E&G facilities on campus. So work orders and housekeeping in the student union will be treated and billed the same way that it will be treated in Milliken Hall, for an example. So with that, we expect some cost savings. They expect some cost savings, so they've projected that that's what our billing will be for the year.
Any other questions regarding the student union? Okay, seeing none. Volunteer UCF, we see a typical increase, and alternative break program budget line 180 was cut a little bit, and I mean it was cut a little bit, and the revenue was also lowered in proportion to how much revenue they are now not going to be bringing in. Any questions regarding? Yes, go ahead.
Can you just elaborate on the expected change part? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so the revenue was lowered to reflect the expected change because they're going to be holding less events. They're now bringing in less revenue because they charge little $15 or something per event for the little kits that they give, and like providing they usually do travel and lunch and such like that. So because they're not holding as many events, they're not going to be bringing in as much. Also, I believe a portion of the revenue change was not reflected from the original cut from last year. So that's why it's like down to 5,000 from 15. Any other questions for volunteer UCF? Alrighty, seeing none. We are now at our non-recurring expenses. This is Netta, could we go to the next slide, please? This is going to be a big one because we have one-time expenses line. We have a line for every single entity. So we have our reserve accounts, which is contingencies, and we put $15,000 in there because utilities may go over a little bit. So if the RWC or the student union were to go over a little bit, we have money right there that we've said, okay, take this. We also have our funding for deferred maintenance through our reserve accounts projects, which is 190. We have $28 million worth of deferred maintenance to cover over 10 years. And we are starting off strong with $3.88 million so that we can get a head start, get a lot of the things in the 1 to 5 year range of projects started. You should be able to see that if you look in their presentations and their budget packets, like specifically examples of that kind of thing. And then establishment of our budget stabilization fund, 191, to protect against an instability of our future budget. So for example, if we have our $18.8 million budget here, and it's actually 18.6, our $200,000 of our budget stabilization will come into effect to make sure that we can actually fund the budget that you have approved. And then as we go down, so one-time expenses, the activity and service fee business office are buying safes for the ticket center. We have Nighthon, I believe that's for marketing. Late Nights also is taking some. MSC, OSI, RWC, and student union. So there's also some deferred maintenance like things that they are doing with one-time expenses as well. OSI's $300,000 is for a renovation of the OSI suite. I've heard that the carpets are the only thing that's been there longer than Shane has, so those need to be replaced. Any questions for one-time expenses? Yes.
For the RWC, is there a reason why it's so much lower than requested?
Yes, there was only $6.5 million to fund for our one-time expenses. As you can see, there was $6.9 million requested for one-time expenses. And we went through as a committee and we looked at what they were asking for. And if you go into the budget packet and you go into one-time expenses, you'll see amended by the committee and where we zeroed out certain things because we prioritized certain things on their list over others based on what we thought would be the best impact on students. So there's some things that we just said no to. President Greenaway, if you want to elaborate.
Just to add, the RWC and the student union, I think, put basically any request that they had for a project. And I know the RWC specifically ranked out of, they had I think like 16 projects and they ranked, and I think we funded like their top 10 or 11. So I think that was kind of how we went about going through the RWC and student union projects.
That's exactly right. We'll go 1 and then 2.
Just because it wasn't in the PowerPoint that I saw, for student government judicial, what is their $3,000 for?
Chief Justice Silva, would you like to? Okay, if you want to come up to a mic.
So in our original request, we had requested $1,000 for promotional items. That request came from the fact that about 2 years ago, the previous internal assistant took a pay cut, and we moved some of the money from OPS into operations to buy judicial merch. That was a significant amount that led us through that whole year, the year before, and most of this year. Where we're at with inventory for that is pretty much depleted. We only have like 200 or something tote bags left, I think. So that should take us through the events of this year, but after that, we're pretty much done. So the money that we have for the events, at least like generally, usually just go to an incentive geared towards that event. So like Java would be coffee from Aramark, and then Candy would be buying candy for that stuff. But we usually have something additional at the tabling events for that, specifically to incentivize students to come talk to us, because the way our events work is that we need to have a conversation because our services are a little bit more nuanced than just, hey, here, come get this free thing. Like that's why we have those. In our request for that, the committee decided that it was best. The other committee members could speak to that. That money was not needed for those circumstances, and it was best that because there was money left in the non-reoccurring fund, that it would be best to give a lump sum of $3,000 to at least fund it for the next 2 years for us to buy some sort of merchandise. And we could make those purchases with that money, but that would leave us with the problem, I guess, in 2 or 3 years from now with the same thing going on.
I had a question about line 194. Is that homecoming?
It is.
Is there a reason why no money was allocated for that?
If I'm not mistaken, that $3,000 was to buy more Spirit Splash ducks, and we put it in their budget for operating instead of one-time expense.
Thank you.
Yes, there were some expenses that we saw as operational in the one-time expense category, so we moved it or said no. And there were some things that we justified that if we paid for a operational expense like marketing, but we give them a sum that would get them to 2 or 3 years, we would put that in a one-time expense. So we did a little bit of that.
Thank you.
Yes. 1, 2.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what budget line 91 and 91 is? Like, how does it work? Like, just anything else about it? Like, it really is kind of vague.
Sure. We'll see the proviso language that describes specifically how it'll be, but essentially, if we have our budget, because it's a projection for what the activity and service fee revenue for the next 3 semesters is. It's going to be what it's going to be for the fall. It's going to be what it is for the spring and summer, right? And those semesters haven't passed yet, so we haven't actually had any, like you don't pay your tuition that far ahead, right? You pay it for the semester, right? So once that semester's revenue has come in, then we actually have actuals. So if those actuals are less than what we projected, then obviously we can't fund the budget the way that we did, right? With this budget stabilization account, we can, if our actuals are less than what we projected as our 18.8, and it's like 18.6, we'll take $200,000 out of the budget stabilization, and it'll come into fund the difference, so that whatever you guys approve here today is going to be able to be carried out. The actual process, it's in proviso language, is that either the committee, if it is meeting at the time, because the committee's not year round, after like there's a short little time, like basically the end of spring into the summer, the committee isn't really a thing. So if the committee's not there to act on authorizing or approving the use of those funds, then a combination of the speaker and the president, student body president, will be able to authorize use of the budget stabilization fund. Yes.
It's kind of like whoever was on the member of the A&SF. Who was the one that kind of like proposed or deemed it that whatever was in judicial's reoccurring, that 3,000 was deemed as non-reoccurring? Like, what was the reasoning for why it was moved from reoccurring? Like, what was your reasoning? I get it's like what Daniel just said, but I want to understand why the idea was proposed in the committee meeting. So, I mean, if they were here, they can say it, but like, I know since they speak for them, but why it was proposed as non-reoccurring?
Comptroller Kane, did you want to?
Yeah, from what I understand, from what I remember, it was requested as a one-time expense to begin with. But the rationale that I understand is this isn't something that they need every year. So the idea behind it is it didn't make sense to build into recurring. This would fund merchandise for the next couple of years of operations, and therefore it would be a one-time expense.
Do you have a follow-up?
You said that it was initially as a non-recurring, but right here it says 0 was the initial asked. Like right here, it says 0 was asked, but then 3,000 was given. So
I believe what happened is that, like the Associate Chief Justice said, is that they already had an instance where it wasn't a non-recurring expense category because that didn't exist until this year. But they took a hit in OPS to be able to fund merchandise that would last them years. So we did that because we wanted to save $3,000 in our reoccurring and our operational budget to put somewhere else. Because if we can get them through years at a time with this, then we don't need yearly operational. Because there's a lot more money to allocate here than there was to allocate in the operational. It's not so much of to allocate in the operational, it's okay, I'm going to move money from this entity to this entity, this budget line to this budget line. Whereas the non-reoccurring, nobody has it. I'm not cutting away from anybody. It's more of where am I putting the money? So it was much easier to do it there. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, like, as personally, who budgets, I don't feel like the idea of budgeting just as friends for like just to deal with it later. I personally think that it should be a reoccurring thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems kind of dumb. Excuse my language. It just doesn't seem as like a very right thing to do. Is just go push it for the next one and just hope that they all give them the 3,000 or Senate gives them the 3,000 or whatever. I just believe it's just kind of like that. We're here is just like their hope until they run out. I just don't believe that's like a correct thing to do. We don't have that other issue in the other branches. It just seems kind of interesting, I would say, about like why.
Comptroller King.
Well, first of all, in terms of if you're going to look at the three branches, we did have a substantial increase in the judicial budget already. I think that was the rationale. Was we were raising the budget pretty substantially over the previous year, and that wasn't happening in the other budgets. And I think this would just be even more kind of an additional increase that if you look at the budget and you look at how we are moving forward, I really haven't spoken about this during this committee, but it's something that everyone should be very aware of. So we're expecting our expenses, just fixed expenses, utilities, salaries, everything, to increase by $600,000 to $800,000 per year, at least. And just to understand the gravity of that, our fee stays the same, and that is something that comes from the state government. So it's very important to know that any increases to recurring operational expenses are probably not good decisions, but we did grant several as we deemed them necessary throughout this process.
Any further questions? Yes.
Similar to my question about judicial, for legal services, they didn't ask for any money, but we gave them $19,000 out of this fund. Where is it going?
Yes. So that is actually something that the committee had just done on Tuesday. So when we were going through their operational budget, we did not approve of a third legal assistant position. So what we are doing instead in the one-time expense, and you can see this is reflected in the line 191, we changed it from 1,700 to 16,800. It's basically the inverse, right? That's where that 19,995.68 comes from. To allow for a third one to be funded for 4 months, because they have a current one that's retiring 4 months into this next budget. So we're going to allow for the training of the replacement. Any other questions for non-reoccurring continuation of other? Oh, yes, go ahead.
So just to come back to the budget stabilization. So say that the overage is, say that we make more than, or like we make the right amount, the projections were correct. Is that added to the next budget, or how does that work? Like what happens to the 1.7 or 1.68 that we allocated?
Good question. So this budget stabilization account was established at this number because we had 6.5 million, right? This is all like, we have this huge amount because we've not been looking at the actuals versus projections, and they've always been over in the past 10 years leading to this year. So that's what the 6.5 million over the past 10 years has accumulated to, right? We're not going to see this ever again. So with this giant amount of money, we're going to establish this fund now. It's not something that we're going to constantly put into. It might be future years down the road if it's used, or if it's deemed by the committee, they can add to it, but this is not intended to be added to every single year. It is just going to sit there. So if this year it's not used, if next year it's not used, it's just going to stay, and it will be used if necessary. Comptroller Kane.
Yeah, just to go off of that, kind of relates to what I spoke about before. But if we do reach a point where our revenue is essentially flat, we would be looking at substantial cuts year over year. So this really allows us, in a worst case scenario, if we don't see increases in revenue, to be able to maintain our current level of operations. And as of the $3 million cut of last year, most departments and agencies have deemed our current level to be near their kind of minimum required level of operations to function effectively. So this really ensures that our departments and agencies can operate effectively for the next few years, no matter what happens with revenue.
Any other question? You have a follow-up?
Kind of. So I think what was said was like, it's going to be like, assuming we do stay flat, it's going to be what, like $600,000 to $800,000 of an increase every year. So wouldn't that pretty much completely deplete the fund? Like how would, my question is like, if we do stay flat, like, does this really, how long does this really buy us? Is it like just a year? Is it a couple of years? Like, how does that work?
Comptroller Kane.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is speculation, but what I do know for sure is expenses go up every year. We don't have unlimited money. We have no prospects of getting an increase in the activity service fee in the immediate future, as of my understanding. So this allows us to at least assure that for the next couple of years, we can operate in a normal capacity. Beyond that is really not something, there's nothing additional that we can do. I think this is a really good measure to ensure well-being for the next couple of years for the departments and agencies.
And to add on, I think this is the first year we've ever really looked to the future and said, what can we do to make sure that we're good, or we're not just saying we're going to budget for this year and not pay attention to the future, right? If we were doing that, the $250 some odd $1,000 in the R&R account that we're setting aside for next year's minimum wage would have been applied everywhere else, right? And then we would have just immediately had to turn around and say, okay, we gave you this money, we got to cut it back again now though, because we don't have the space for it. Another thing that I also think a possible use case of this budget stabilization is not necessarily to fully cover increases, but to lessen the impact of increases. If we're going up by 800,000, maybe we do 400,000 from the budget stabilization to make it a less of an impact. And we don't take huge hits like 3 million ever again, right? We can make it sure that they're lesser so that we are able to operate and ease our way into it. Not just suddenly we have all these things and now we're at the very minimum, the very, very bottom. Any further questions for non-recurring? Go ahead.
Someone was good with numbers. What's like the estimated amount for judicial when it came to the wage increase? because in a sense, like when you're just increasing wages, they still technically kept the same like budget in a sense. You literally just changed. I'm still not understanding like.
Can we
I
go
don't
back
feel like
to
they
judicial?
stay even like
Netta?
equate to like the operations that we do. I don't know. I just feel like yeah, you increase wages. Yeah, I understand that, but then it's just like there's still not money enough for them to technically operate to do the other stuff. And yeah, they get paid, but then they're still kind of like do other stuff. I mean, like I remember like their retreat. I was looking into this stuff. You know, our retreat's sitting in this chamber doing projects, and then their retreats sitting in like this. Like they're doing their training, is what I've heard. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out like. I'm just feel like judicial's budget does not really adequate to like the amount that we're putting in. I feel like they should deserve more. But I'm not really the best with like these all like the 5 Excel sheets I have open. So I'm trying to like figure out like what exactly like I mean you increase their wages, but then now they have like less money to operate with in a sense. Like you gave them money, but you gave them money just to increase their wages.
Operations was increased by
real quick.
50%.
Can we go back to judicial, Netta? Slide 24. So operations went up by $2,150. OPS went up by 2,000 something or around there. But this is a good conversation to have. I mean, this is the place to have it. If you have thoughts of your own and you want to discuss it, I encourage the rest of Senate to contribute as well and discuss, because this is the last chance you'll have for this year.
I mean, I'll even say it like, sorry, Sierra.
Speaker Holmes.
I will say that while you know they did increase a little bit, I will say that judicial bit struggles with their budget. I'm not sure how we can mitigate this, if we can mitigate this now or if we can mitigate it in the future as they do small increases per year and they advise their future leadership to continue to increase so that they're able to get their money. But I do think something needs to be done. I just don't know if it can be done now or for the future. So I do think this is a difficult conversation, but it's an important conversation to be had. And I'm curious to what everybody else thinks. I know that the budget that we currently have is agreed upon, and it's a really good budget. I just want to at least have the conversation, even if something can be done within the next year. If it doesn't have to be done now.
I want to ask the judicial branch representative. Since Speaker Holmes did say you guys struggle, I wasn't aware of that. Can you kind of, I want to say if you could elaborate, give more of a perspective of how more money would benefit your efforts or in your outreach efforts as well?
Yeah. So if it's all like laid out in the presentation, but just to put words to that more than anything is we've had to take some sacrifices in some places. So initially when I was appointed to this position as like the outreach officer for the judicial branch, I had planned at least 3 events on main campus and then 3 events on other campuses because of budgetary constraints, because we have other necessary expenditures. So, you know, jackets and name tags, that's uniforms for our justices to be able to host those. But we've also had to spend on judicial leadership councils and other things like that. So we've also had to cut one event from each the fall and the spring because we're only reaching our statutory minimum, and that's all we've been able to do. We've had expansions of our service arms. We're just now starting with Title IX. And so we're expanding in many ways, but we can't necessarily reach the students where they are because the money that we've been given has only let us do what we are statutorily required to. And I know it's sort of like the mantra that we don't necessarily need to move farther from that, but that's something that our leadership and Chief Justice Silva has not enforced, but encouraged us to do is move past the walls of the student government office and reach out to these places. So I've taken on that effort as Lisa's trying to continue, you know, outreach events and bringing incentives and doing this and doing that. But the reality is we have $6,000 to pay for, or $4,000 this year to pay for everything. That's our retreats, the uniforms, all of those events, and the unexpected expenses. Like we try to at least have lunch for our justices on a 9 to 5 day where we had the USF Supreme Court come in for a visit, but we couldn't pay for that. We just had to give at least be gracious hosts and pay for their lunch. But those are long days and things that we like to have special initiatives for, but the money's just not there. So we're really good at stretching those dollars as far as we can, but there's only so much that we can do.
Anybody else with comment? Go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying question to the justice?
You may.
You said that you do 3 events on this campus and 3 on the other campuses. Does that include like downtown and Rosen? Like, do you do 3 at downtown, 3 at Rosen, or do you like split it amongst them?
So we don't. I really wanted to, but the money wasn't there for that. So what we've done is 2 on main campus in the spring. I'm planning one for Lake Nona, trying to do like the first week of March. And then our JLCers are taking over the second spring event. So we haven't been able to expand. I'm hoping to at least to Lake Nona, but that was the goal. But then the reality of the budget came in and it wasn't there because of the other expenses that we have to make.
From hearing from Speaker Holmes and Sergeant Arnzakera, I actually am not opposed to the increase of their budget. I personally wouldn't want to take from any other agency or department. So I feel like if we were to really increase their budget and give them, if not what they asked for, just a little bit more from what the committee actually did granted them, I would personally request taking from the stabilization budget, because I would hate to see us cut from any other agency, since like Speaker Holmes said, the budget did look pretty good already. And even though a lot of the agencies were upset that we already cut from them or only granted them, the utilities, I wouldn't want to touch them. So I would only really concur with that.
I have to make a clarification. We cannot take any funds from the non-reoccurring expenses and put it into the operational budget, because those are 2 separate funds, right? We separated them because non-reoccurring expenses are funds that are not going to be there next year. They're not guaranteed. They're fluctuating. So we cannot take anything from budget lines 189 through 209 and put them through anything from 1 to 187. So if we're talking about moving things, which is okay, we have to think more of what agency, because you're gonna have to take it from within the operating budget. DeMarla.
So if we take some money from that non-recurring budget line, move it somewhere else, like for example, I'm just trying to think this through, like the stabilization line, like if you took some money from that, moved it to another entity, and instead took some money from their original budget line, or like their original budget line, and moved it to judicial, would that work?
No.
Like not like if from like take it from their recurring account. Does that make sense? Like everything would move between the recurring and the non-recurring.
Nothing can move between the 2.
No, like within the 2 budgets. So
say it again, please.
Okay, no, you're good. I think I'm making this confusing. So you have your non-recurring, your recurring. If you move, for example, I'll say that we're taking it from, like say that we're taking money from the legislative branch to the judicial branch.
Are you saying from the operational budget?
I'm saying from the recurring, right?
Yeah.
We would take it from the recurring of the legislative to the recurring of the judicial, and then on the non-recurring, we could take it from the stabilization line and move that amount that we lost in the recurring from legislative to the one-time fee, and legislative in the non-recurring.
That would just be giving judicial more money in both places.
No, we would be moving it to the legislative in the non-recurring.
Okay, but what would it then be used for legislative branch?
I mean, we could find what the reason, like whether that's merch or whatever, but that way we could move money to the judicial branch the recurring.
I'm not sure that is the best idea, nor because you would be doing that. And the thing about the one-time expenses is that those ones specifically do have like stated one-time purposes. Just moving that money kind of like, and like you can do that in the operations of the operational budget more. Like I can put money into operations and you guys will find more events to do. You guys will find that that's different than doing that same kind of concept of just moving around the monies without having like a specific purpose in this new non-reoccurring expenses budget.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah.
Do we know who got the largest operational budget increase out of every entity? Because if we could take some like $2,000 from whoever got the largest increase in their operations budget and move that to judicial for like assistance.
I
for
would
them.
have to look
Okay.
to see the differences. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm not sure that would be the best method to go.
Off the top of my head, that's RWC, and the RWC has very specifically allocated where their expenses are out of pure necessity. So I don't think that would be a good decision.
Yeah, it's always going to be the largest increases are going to be in the largest budgets, which is RWC, Student Union, OSI.
I'm not a money person, so if this is a bad idea, you could tell me immediately. But can exec and the legislative branch like make a decision on a total fund that we could take from both of our funds and give it to judicial? Like we say, like we'll give from both of us 2,000, so exec takes like 1,000, and then we take 1,000 from somewhere and we give it to them. That's just an example number. It doesn't have to be 2,000.
Speaker Holmes and President Greenaway would have to talk about that. Did you have a question?
Not necessarily.
No, not Speaker Holmes. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, my bad. I'm so sorry. I thought you pointed at me.
I'm sorry. I don't know names, so I couldn't say specifically.
So this is going back to slide 13, but I just had a question about line 44. So it says splash, and I just assumed that meant spirit splash. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to ask the question, what was the reason for like a $6,000 increase in budget? And looking at that $6,000 increase in budget, maybe some of that budget could be taken to help the judicial branch?
Shane.
So that was sorry, that was the increase in production costs, because that's a big chunk of what they do. But that was also for the ducks. So when the ducks weren't in the non-reoccurring, that 3,000 in the non-reoccurring, that was for the increase in the cost of those.
Comptroller Kane.
I was just looking out of pure curiosity, but I'd also like to point this out. Both the executive and legislative branches currently have their budgets below cut levels. And as of the current money that we're allocating to judicial, it's actually above the levels of last year. So they're the only student government agency to do that. So I don't think it's fair to represent it the way that's being represented, because that's not what the numbers are saying.
You have two? You might.
First of all, is there any way that we can like get access to the executive branch? Like we're trying to all access it, and it just says that we need
The budget packet?
Yeah, no, for the presentations that were done like for executive branch, like you know how every like we were looking at the RWC one, and we
President
wanted
Greenaway, if you could like make those available. Okay.
Okay,
thank
perfect. And then the second one, I was just wondering if we can get a little bit more of an elaboration on the numbers, like specifically for professional development. Like if you could break that down via retreat, via training, stuff like that, really, so we could see where we can maybe chip into.
Can we go back to that? Can I find the presentation and then go into the operations budget?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. Did you have? Saw some other hand. I saw. Yes.
Am I allowed to speak? Like, okay, cool. While I understand and like know that the way the percentages look like that our like operations budget is the one taking the biggest increase this year, it's not even 0.1% of most of like the total budget. And I thank the senators who are speaking in our favor for an increase of that, because the reality is it's $2,000 or $4,000 that we would be asking for the increase. But the way we've seen the funds move this year is that money would significantly change the way the judicial branch has outreach yield. That money would give us more breathing room to bring bigger incentives and bigger events and host them for longer, so that we can actually reach students where they are. And so while I understand that the percentage is big, it's like 15 or I don't know, I also have like 5 spreadsheets open. But it really would fundamentally like change the way that the branch operates as far as outreach goes, because that's pretty much all we do. We don't really see much of the internal disputes that like we have powers for judicial review. We pretty much focus everything that we can on our student service arms and the expansion of those. And we're trying to focus that more than ever. And that's why we're making these requests, and not to make it seem like outlandish or we're asking for the entire budget, but it's just something that can transform the way that we work, and honestly something that can help future councils and future justices continue that work at the level that we're trying to.
Going back to slide 12, campus activities board, you said that we added money to fine arts impact and to special events. That was for production costs, I'm assuming. I know it's like $2,000, $3,000, and $5,000. Is there a way to like take a little bit from each one and hand it over?
You could do whatever you want with a motion,
I'm
but
saying
if
more
you're
like-
asking like what meaningful number would make a difference,
Right.
I maybe in the presentation, I can't recall off the top of my head all the different presentations, but they may have done a breakdown for each one of what the additions would be, like 500 for police, 600 for rental of X thing, merchandise for stuff like that. I'd say you can't just take 50, 50, 100. I would say keep it to like kind of more round numbers, like maybe 100 would be one, but not like any weird amount or
I'm not
chipping
saying
off
like
a
tiny
little
numbers.
bit.
I'm saying like maybe $500 to $1,000 to toll, but I know it's going to be a hit on them as well. So
Yeah,
finding the-
that's another thing we always have to consider is is it worth subtracting $500 from 3 different giant categories that CAB does. Right. That's a conversation for you all, but I want you to keep that in mind. And another thing I want you all to keep in mind as well, and it's something that has been on my mind a lot when I've been looking at the budget that the committee has approved, is that if you are on the budget Excel sheet and you just scroll along the sides, we have the percentage change over last year from this year for their budget. But we also have like the year over year dollar, like as a hard percent. So you'll see starting at line 1, there's a $390 deficit for business office, but that's also just because there's also the change with, separating out the ticket center this year. So that's not fully there, but it's also because of the R&R accounts. What I'll also say is that you'll see $11,000, $10,000, $3,000, $2,000, like small little chunks that were given back. That includes operational costs going up. That includes OPS, but that also includes all the other stuff that we wanted to give back. If you add all of that together, that may or may not all just need to be cut next year too, right? Because $600,000 to $800,000 increase, we only put $250 for minimum wage, $250 out of $300, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind, is that things may revert back to how they were with this $18.2 million budget, depending on whether we see increase or not, whether or not we see new strategies to be able to counteract things just costing more. So that is an important factor I think you all should keep in mind.
Can we move things within the non-recurring expenses from one non-recurring to another non-recurring?
Yes.
So is it possible to move something from the budget stabilization or from the reserve accounts to judicial to add to that 3,000? Because if you're saying things like merch as well as for like uniforms, so would that help?
This turns into funding operational through the non-reoccurring. And I would say that while you have the technical yes, I'd say the strategic no. We should not get into a habit of trying to fund any operational things, even if it's just like, oh, we're going to say we're doing it for this 1 year. I think that's a bad habit to get us into at the very, very start of this. We're doing this 3,000 with the intent of doing it for this 1 year, and then hopefully that'll be able to get them through another couple of years like how they had done previously, because we couldn't do that in the operational budget. So we wanted to give them something, but don't fund operations through non-operations. We'll go green away than cane.
Can I go back to Lazo's original question?
Yes.
You want to read the question? Just operations, what kind of goes into that?
Yeah, just like go into a little bit more into like executive forms, retreat, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So if you could pull up our request packet too. It's in there if you want to see in there. So like I said before, the operations already took a $1,000 cut in there, and that would be coming from the training and retreats. In terms of retreats, a ballpark for summer, fall, and spring is around $3,500 for the retreats. So again, that would be taking $1,000 cut. Within the development and retreats this year was the travel to the Student Government Big 12 conference. And then a big piece of operational supplies is stuff that benefits all three branches. So, a lot of the stationery that you're using, a lot of the tablecloths, different merchandising items, all come out of that budget. And then on top of that is Florida Student Association. So as student body president, I serve on the Florida Student Association with all the other student body presidents in the state of Florida. And every month there are different trips to different universities to hold our monthly meetings. And then finally, there are uniforms on top of that as well. So those are kind of all the things that go into the operations budget. Any cuts from that I think would be detrimental to the branch. And I am in favor of adding more funding over to the judicial branch, but I don't think that it should come from that operations budget.
What I was gonna say is we're talking about a couple $1,000s. I do appreciate all the debate, but if someone could please make a motion on either way, so we can move on, that would be great.
So after conferring with the pro tempore and Senate, you can say and put your input in this as well. But we've come to the conclusion that we can give $500 to the judicial branch. It's not a lot, but it will help them to a little bit. I don't know if 500 will do too much, but it's just for our miscellaneous office supplies like printers and things like that. And we're already replacing our printers this session. So there shouldn't be any issue with the $500. And if you need reassurance from pro tempore, she'd be more than glad to give it to you. So
I mean, I think Sierra explained it well. Sierra and I are going to make sure that we do a good job this year for setting up the next session for success, especially with their budget. So I really don't see an issue with this $500 being transferred somewhere else. I've also looked at our budget and how we were doing this year, and we're all set to end the year well.
Before we move on, President Greenaway, where is your presentation? I can no longer even find it in the budget committee.
I put it in the Senate chat.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll go Temple, and then I'm sorry, I do not know your name.
Question to the speaker, the pro tempore. So should we decide to move the $500, where would that be coming from?
it would be coming from wherever miscellaneous office supplies is, and I think that's operations. Yeah. And if you guys want to see our budget, you can if you want. We have a spreadsheet, but we have more than enough money left over.
So a question and a follow-up. So earlier we were talking about homecoming, how they requested 3,000 for the ducks, and you moved it to recurring. How much did you move to recurring? Was it 3,000?
We did that 3,000. What we did was we just zeroed it out there, and then within the operational budget did that. So it's not like we moved the money. It's more of
I understand how
we just shifted where it was going to be. We were like, okay, you're requesting this. Not really here. You mean to request it here, so we're going to put it here.
And you made that decision for them, or is that
we were talking with them?
Okay.
We during the budget hearings, we were speaking with the representatives.
Because I'm just wondering if we're looking to, and I love ducks. I want this to be on public record. But if we're looking for a way to move money in that sense, to have a reoccurring thing for judicial, and I do understand that both do happen yearly, I think that might be something that we look at just as for the entirety of Senate. If we're looking to move money somewhere, that might be something that we look into taking and then giving from the non-recurring.
Can I ask another question to the justice? How much money is the minimum do you think you need to have added to be able to do the things that you would like?
So initially, when we were building the budget packet, we walked in with a figure of $10,450. Out of that, we expected a figure around $8,000 to take us through all of the expenses. so that we can reach the level that we want to. So if Senate would be willing for an increase, what the money we'd be looking at that we were hoping to get out of it, like realistically, would be $8,000.
So an additional 1,800. Speaker Holmes,
May I make a motion?
you may.
Okay, correct me. I haven't actually, my 3 years never done this, so for this specifically. Motion.
Wait, one
to-
second. Netta, do we have for on the budget bill, we're writing this stuff down too? Okay, awesome.
Okay. Motion to move $500 from line 151 to line 146. Oh, cool.
There's been a motion to move $500 from student government legislative branch operations line 151 to student government judicial branch operations line 146. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, we'll go into voting procedures. You'll vote like normal in Senate. Just give us a second to get that going. Do just one of the random other amendment, like amendment 1, the non-specific, because we're moving over. Yeah, judicial. Just do. Either works. Yep. Okay, I'm supposed to see a vote count here, but I don't. So, okay, with the vote count of 29 to 0 to 1, the vote passes. Speaker Holmes.
This isn't a motion or anything, but it's just for judicial that hopefully this little $500, you can ask for a little bit more next time. It puts your leg up, So, yeah, that's all I have to say for that. But yeah.
I do want to say on behalf of the judicial branch and leadership at the judicial branch, thank you to Senate, the legislative branch, the speaker, and the pro temp. I know it's just $500, but honestly, anything helps. And I really appreciate you all for hearing us out.
We can clap for that. Okay.
This is like going to like all branch heads, I guess, in a sense. Like, exec has 3 retreats, judicial has 1, Senate has 1. Can you describe like how these went these past semester? Also like personal stuff, like were you worried about not being able to, actually fund it in a sense? I just want to understand like if it was literally like the entire time you were thinking about money and not being able to, feed yourself because you wanted to, give food at the event. So I would, start with Senate President, then judicial, then exec.
Go ahead.
So we're only required to have 1 according to statutes, and that's for fall. And so essentially all we did was fund food. And so we just had to make sure that, the senators could eat. And so that's why we asked for a $2,500 increase in professional development, because unfortunately the last speaker did not ask for any increases. And so we couldn't account for inflation. And so for the $2,500 is specifically to increase for our banquet and retreat. Banquet's a little bit more than retreat. So we asked for I want to say 7,000. I can look at it, but I'm just going to go off the top of my head. So it would be about, I want to say now around 3,000 for retreat, which could cover a different space than the charge on chambers. And now for the banquet, we will not be having to dip into any funds, because last time we did have to. 4,000 wasn't enough to feed everyone and actually have something that was upscale for our senators, because they do give free work to the student body. And so now I think we are working with about 5,000 for our banquet, but that's essentially what we do is the bare minimum food, and for the banquet, we pay for our space.
Thank you for your question. The judicial branch, typically, at least in the branch that I grew up in, we had 3 retreats a year, 1 each semester. And this year, I kind of decided that I wanted to move away from that and dip into our polo fund. So the justices didn't get polos this year, in order to have one big retreat, because I really wanted to make it big for the justices this year. So we had one big fall retreat over the like at the beginning of the semester, technically like over the summer, but so that our justices, after getting on the branch, could get trained to the fullest, and we fed them. We have never done that before, and I feel like that's something that really made a big change this year. And in the future, I would like to see this, at least if it's only once a year, be a continuous trend, because I do think that we've expanded a lot this year, and not only doing our Title IX training for our Title IX campaign that's going to be coming up soon, but just in general, all of our services arms have expanded, and we've expanded beyond the doors of just the SG office. So I think that retreat has really helped us this year, but it is unfortunate that we did have to lose, our polos for that.
Sorry.
Do you have a question specific?
No, it's like a follow-up question to her. Sorry, I just...
Sure.
So you just spent most of that retreat just doing training?
Yes.
All right.
So this year, we had our summer retreat, which is a weekend retreat. It's really an opportunity for the executive cabinet to get to know each other. Majority of us were strangers kind of going into the year. So it's really an opportunity to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses. There's lots of bonding activities, as well as each person of the cabinet does a presentation and budget requests within our student initiatives budget. So all of their goals and initiatives for the year. I've been on 3 cabinets. This is my 3rd cabinet. And, there's been cabinets where the retreat was very focused on, just the initiatives and not bonding. And, I'm not sure if anyone was around that year, but it was a year where the cabinet did not get along, and there was a lot of inner turmoil and drama. So this year, Colby and I really wanted to focus on making sure that everyone got along and respected each other. And I think it went to show, we've had a really successful year. We've accomplished a lot of initiatives, and we have a lot more coming. So I think that really goes to show the importance of, building a family environment like we did within the executive branch. So I'm really proud about that. We did not do a fall retreat. I'm correct, right? And then we did our spring retreat the first week of the spring semester on campus, which was just, make your presentation for everything else you're working on this semester. And we could see how that fits inside of our budget. And, a few more bonding things. We made a cabinet vision board. And that's pretty much it. So, those are really important for the cabinet to really have that time together. To be able to, when it comes to going into the office and working on the initiatives, to work together and succeed.
Before I call on Pro Tempore DeMarla, I do want to clarify, Senate does have like 2 or 3 retreats. The first Senate orientation does count. And then I remember, I don't know about, because during the 54th, we had one in the fall. It was a training one for statutes, fiscal. I ran through a few things with Senate then. But I don't know if you guys do one in the spring.
Spring isn't required. Fall is, but orientation to feed the senators. I mean, they're there all day, but too. I overlooked it because I didn't fund it, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yes. Pro Tempore DeMarla.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that. For any senators who are gonna be doing this next session as well, like our retreat line is very sacred to us. I know during the first retreat, literally me and Sierra were calculating how much money we had for the second one in spring because we wanted to do a second one and we had $400, I think. So we were like, you know what, let's just get like an inflatable pool and that's a retreat. Like that's gonna have to be it or something. So, you know, if in the future for next session, if there is more space, that could also be something to look into, but I don't think right now is necessary. But yeah, I know when we gave the head count for the food, Sierra and I didn't even include ourselves in the budget just in case we needed that extra money.
To be questions anybody knows like that can answer. Where was that like summer retreat held, and like how much did it like cost, like ballpark?
Yeah, so that retreat was held in it's called Saddlebrook Resort. It's actually a former member of the executive cabinet is a manager at that hotel, so we get discounted room rates. And I think, Jeremy, that retreat was around $3,000. Is that correct? Yeah. Awesome.
So we all held our retreats here, but you got a retreat at a hotel or sport resort. Go ahead.
And you know, during the budget hearings, we took $1,000 cut on that. So, you know, I'm gone in 3 months. I'm not sure who's next and what they decide to do, but I think doing that type of retreat will not be entirely possible with the cut that was already taken.
I just feel like we did the same thing that y'all kind of built. Like there's also like, there were like 30 of us and we kind of did the same thing that y'all did when y'all were like a lot less than us and we were still able to bond together.
Let's make sure we're refraining from doing any like attack.
Oh, I'm just saying like each branch was able to do the same activities in the same location except for a different branch that was doing it at a different location. I just feel like we could all equally do the same thing that was accomplished there, just here and save that money.
President Greenway, do you have a response?
Just a few things, you know. Again, like I explained the difference, I think the executive cabinet, again, you know, the importance at that bond and that really essential working together every single day is a lot different than how some of the other branches operate. So I think that's why that summer retreat is important. Again, we already took a cut on that budget, so I do not know what retreats will be possible in the future. And I mean, finally, you know, a cut to our operations budget, you know, whatever that might look like, and that's up to y'all to decide. But in that operations budget, like I said, was a lot of things that help Senate as well as judicial branch, you know, tabling supplies, all that other things that everyone takes from the office comes from that budget. So, you know, that might have to be relooked if a cut is made to that operations budget, if executive branch can fund those things as well.
I'm just curious, is like more of a clarifying question. I know that Senate hosts their bank at the Celeste Hotel. I don't know if UCF owns that hotel, if we have a partnership with them, but compared to how much you guys pay at, I forgot the name of the hotel that you guys go to, but that one and the Celeste Hotel, would it be more in a sense, or would it be around the same price?
I think it would be a lot more. The Celeste, I don't think there's a direct connect with discounted rates for the Celeste. And again, you know, we are talking about a very small percentage of the budget. So, you know, if a motion wants to be made, it can be made, but that's what I think about the operations budget.
I just have a question. Do you think that there was anything in specific that holding it outside of campus was beneficial to y'all?
Of course, yeah. I think it's important to get off of campus and be away from all the different distractions and things that might be coming to a regular college student, and just really having that time together to get to know each other and have that opportunity to work together. And again, like I said, I think that's exactly why we have accomplished so much this year. And we've been able to build strong partnerships and relationships with really everyone across campus. So I'm very proud of the work of the executive branch. And I think a lot of it has to do with the groundwork that was laid at that first retreat.
I just have a couple more clarifying questions. Sorry. I was just wondering if you can go in depth into like what the $500 repair cost was and the $2,500 uniform cost was for 16 people.
All right. Is there any other questions while Comptroller Kane is looking into that?
This is not at all related to what's happening right now. Could I direct a question to the person who's like in charge of the homecoming? Is that
I don't believe homecoming representatives here, but Shane will be
okay?
glad to take that question.
I need you to promise to not hate me after what I say. I was just wondering, I don't like kicking rocks down the road. And I think that the way that this is, no matter what we have to kick one rock down the road, but I would like to kick the rock very far away from us. So in line 146.
Are you making a motion?
No, I was just talking.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
So for Splash, you had said before that we moved money that was requested in non-recurring to giving them money in recurring and I was wondering if a figure that was mentioned before was $8,000 in operations for recurring for judicial. So right now we're 1,300 off of that. I was wondering if, and this is, I want all the Senate to like boo me if this is bad. If we move the recurring money from the duck line, which would be 1,300 from that to judicial's operations, that would get them to their 8,000, which would allow them to do more outreach, which I think that you can't really say how important that is. I can't. I know how important it is. I'm sure we all do already. And then decide to take, so taking that money and then giving it to them in non-recurring. If we give them 6,500, that'd be 5 years, which is, again, kicking the rock down the road. I understand that argument, but it is pretty far away. I mean, I've been alive for like only 5 years. So that's like my life. So, but if we take that money from, let me find what line it is again. I'm sorry. There are a lot of lines. And you guys did a great job doing all this. It looks good.
44 is Splash.
Yeah.
Line 44.
Then,
and then 146, I believe, is judicial operations.
And then the money, the non-recurring expense for budget stabilization, if we take 6,500 from there and add it to the one-time expenses for homecoming, which is 194, that would allow them to have that recurring money for it's not recurring, I understand, but in a sense it's recurring for 5 years. And I can understand if we want to extend that and take more money from, which again, I'm looking just at budget stabilization to take from, because it isn't like a lot of money. And I know that we're going to need to use that money over time with inflation and minimum wage increases. So I do understand that, but I just wanted to put that idea out there because that's still not what they're asking for. I mean, in a perfect world where money didn't exist, they'd have their 10,000, but they said 8,000 before, and that's just a way that we could get there. So
So about that plan, I'm not too sure because that does, it's just, you're essentially trying to do operational and the non-operational, but for the specific duck amount, Shane, that 3,000 wasn't just like, that was a specific amount for a specific reason, right?
So here's what I'm going to say is homecoming has taken some huge cuts over the year, and their costs and their expenses have gone through the roof, to the point where they used to have 5 events in the arena, and now they've had to move some of those events out of the arena for cost. If this is just about you all finding $1,300 to be able to support judicial to get there, I have a recommendation of where I would take the money from my OSI budget to give that, if that's what's going to kind of solve this challenge, because I believe the retreat money for what you all do for all of your areas are important. They're different, but they're important. So I would recommend you take the 1,300 from line, let me find this line, 93, which is our Knights of the Connection. Those are some of our Connect campuses, and some of our numbers have been slowly decreasing there. So I don't think that would have, if you took 1,300 from there, we'd be able to operate fine.
I really appreciate that, because I mean, you know that a lot better than I do. So thank you very much for that. I do want to stress that this money is not going to be for a retreat. From my understanding, it would be more so for outreach. I just want to make sure I'm not, but thank you so much. I really do appreciate that input.
Okay, I saw a hand, and then we'll come up here.
I have an off-topic question.
Okay. If because we're supposed to have like 70 something senators, if we had that many senators, could we, with right now how much we have for a retreat, fund the food and everything for a retreat?
If we had all the seats filled, realistically, we wouldn't with the money we have. Previously, last session, we were able to pull out of like the Senate Working Fund because we had money left over. But I know that we've cut that down the next year, correct? So I'm not quite sure if we would be able to do that.
If you want a little bit more context on that, we did our retreat in the fall. We used a on-campus room, so that was free for us. I believe it was in the health sciences building. And then actually we didn't use any money for the food because we were a little bit last minute on that. So myself, Pro Temp Foster, and Speaker Hall at the time paid for the pizzas ourselves. And then, yeah, for the money that you were talking about, we took out from our FAO account because there was a lot left and we were already closing at that point. We used that for banquet. They're under the same, it's all under operations. They used to all be separated into different lines, but now they're all combined. So our retreat, orientation, and our banquet is all just the same. Comptroller Kane or President Greenaway?
I just had Ryan, because you said y'all paid for it, but you just didn't submit the payment. Like y'all had the money to pay for it, you just didn't submit the payment in time. Is that why?
Yes, it was
a
a timing issue.
Got it.
Yes.
All I wanted to say was I think it's very important. Obviously, all the conversations we're having, I think it's very important to remember that it is our job to allocate money for what is best for the entire student body, not what is best for student government. I think that the fact that we're debating about only student government for this amount of time, if someone can make a motion, please, or bring up something unique, I think we can move on from this and deal with any other issues.
I saw a hand right there first.
I had a question that was not a motion.
Okay, can we hold on to that? Okay, awesome. Raise your hand if you have a motion. Kringle.
Howdy. So I want to make a motion to decrease. Oh gosh, I have to look at the line. I'm so sorry. To decrease line 132 by $1,500, specifically taking away from the uniform and retreat expense items. I personally don't think, at least it's just my kind of debate, I personally don't think that we should be spending $2,500. I think it was allocated on uniforms for members that are here to serve the student body. I think the retreats are a little too lavish for what they are and what they can still accomplish while using less money. So I'd like to take that $1,500 and move it somewhere else if we can.
So you're just decreasing?
Just decreasing for now.
All right, there's been a motion to decrease line 132, student government executive branch operations, by $1,500. Are there any objections right now to this motion? Seeing none, we're going to be in voting procedures. If we could get an executive amendment up there, Netta. What? I don't make motions. I actually am not a voting member, so I can't make motions. I can only accept what have been made. So yes, we're going to do that. Unless somebody wants to object. Oh, are we already? Yeah, you should hit start voting, please. Exec, just exec. Is this? Yes. Okay. Okay, 25 to 4 to 2. That amendment passes. The changes will be made. I also will say that we do have a good supply of extra amendment options, Netta, so that it shouldn't be an issue. They don't all need to be specifically named. So we should be fine.
I'm gonna ask my question now. So for the A&SF budget business office for slide 10. Going back to salaries and benefits and OPS, is there a reason for the $25,000 and $40,000 deduction?
Dr. Posey.
Sorry, I think I'm the wrong button there. Yes, that was the separation from the OPS students. They were all under the Activity and Service Fee Business Office. That included the students for the ticket center. Excuse me. But because we separated them, the sales representatives are now under the ticket center and no longer under the business office. So that's the reason that's much less.
That answered your question. Also added context, I believe last year, Shane, did you actually, you gave us a little bit of money for our retreat, didn't you, as well? That was yes. That happened as well. I'm sorry, I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
I have a foundation account.
For the
one.
orientation retreat, right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So there was some supplementing there.
Motion to, I guess, put the $1,500 we just decreased into judicial's operation.
Okay, so motion to increase line 146 judicial operations by $1,500. Can I get a thumbs up? Well, yes, okay, that is correct. Are there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Yes, line 146 is judicial operations. Okay, voting's live. Oh, voting ended. Oh, then yes, go ahead.
Where did we take that from again? Which line?
That was the 1,500 we subtracted from executive OPS, and that passed, by the way, 29 to 0 to 2.
Yes, but which line in exec did we take it from?
Their operations, which is line 132. It was two separate amendments, but that's where that came from. Also, real quick, okay, never mind. It got fixed. There was an issue on Excel. Any further questions, debate, anything? We're on the whole budget now, so we can go back to any entity as we have. Yes.
So this is for comptroller. You mentioned that we have to keep in mind that it is for the students as a whole. And I think that is important when we're discussing agencies, that is for the students as a whole. Those agencies work tirelessly to make sure that they are not only safe, they're having fun. It's part of the student experience. And with homecoming being brought up, I can say that they are running on the bare minimum for their operations. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay, so in the future, let's make sure all debate is directed towards me. We're not going to do any direct debating to other members. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that at the very beginning, but yes.
Was there a question?
Was there a question? Or it was just a statement? Okay. Yeah, if there's, especially if it's statements, let's all direct it towards me at all times, please. That's true, but the way that was said.
Question to the supervisor of elections.
Go ahead.
Can you elaborate on your advertising expense? Just like kind of go in detail on like what it's spent for.
Yeah, so a lot of our budget is basically just the merchandise you'll see us hand out prior to elections and also during the voting tent to encourage students to vote. We traditionally also do the Smoothie King smoothies on the last day of voting to kind of encourage students to vote. Also for different funding for the events such as the presidential debate and then the candidate forum that we're going to have. I know previous years they did like a whole buffet and it was a whole thing at the presidential debate and they made it the fancy and whatnot. So we're going to try to do that again this year, and then hopefully continuing that for future years to encourage more students to come learn about the presidential tickets and their platforms. And then we're also going to hope to do like light refreshments and whatnot at the candidate forum. But yeah, just in general, trying to encourage students to get involved, flashy advertising to get their attention, and and then yeah, the rest is just the salary or the hourly for the supervisor and the assistant.
You followed, yes.
I know you were assistant supervisor of elections last year, correct? So from last year to this year and like what you foresee for the budget, do you typically always spend like the full amount of that expense?
I'm gonna be so honest. Carly managed that last year. So the previous supervisor. I know for this year, I do plan on using our complete budget though.
Kringle.
Question towards legislative, if I may, Sierra.
Yeah, go ahead.
How much is our budget this year for uniforms, or for the staff coming year, I guess?
Let me pull that up for uniform.
Was that 500 line item?
Let me see. Sorry, I have to look at the breakdown. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Are you asking for a budget line or how much we use so far?
Yeah, I mean, if you have both, that'd be fantastic.
I have the uniforms up. It's $30,500.
So yes, so uniforms includes polos. It actually includes merch for the caucus. We split that with the D&I coordinator this year around. We collaborate with them on that. And we were gonna do SLC polos, but we still may. That's pending. But let me see. I think 35,000 is the goal for that. Yeah.
3,500.
Sorry, 3,500. Not 30,000. Ain't nothing worth that for some SG polos. Let me tell you that. Better be made out of gold. But yeah.
And to follow up, you said you wanted to know how much we've spent on it. Is that what you said? We spent in that category 3,583.
And that's used by caucuses as well, correct?
Yes.
The caucus money came from speaker initiatives, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like because the line is merged into operations, we just put that under materials and supplies. Yeah.
For the new budget, for like
Yes.
last year's budget.
Yes.
And like, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
There's a question to like the pro temp and the speaker. So I'm kind of confused in the sense of where we pull the caucus money from, and another like a two that kind of goes with it. How much did we spend? Like, what's been like the common like spending with the like what 7 caucuses we have now?
So for the caucuses, it's okay. So I actually have the numbers right here. So for Black Caucus, okay, and it's first come first serve for this money. Like I tried to divide it, so whoever gets to it first kind of gets to it first, and they have to go to the D&I coordinator. But for Black Caucus, we spent around $355.24. For APIA Caucus, this needs to be updated, but it was around $400. And then LGBTQ plus caucus, we spent about $215. And then for our merch, for the branch as a whole, we spent $962.45. So we're 83.95 over the uniforms budget for that.
I believe budget-wise, it was budgeted for 500 per, which totals to 3,000. And this was before
Yes.
the introduction of a 7th.
Yes.
Pro temp to Marla.
And then I wanted to add that the D&I coordinator is very kind, and she also does help. I mean, we want to make sure that our caucuses are very involved in student government as a whole. So if, she's already working on the project, some of them will go to her and ask, but we also want to make sure that majority of it at least tries to come. We're going to do the best we can to support our caucuses. But she's very nice to help us out.
Go ahead.
So did we anticipate, I don't know, the chair of the caucus is not here to speak for it, but hypothetically, if the military and veterans become a full standing one, and if they were requesting funding, did we anticipate the addition of that caucus with funding?
Sorry, my bad. May I respond?
Sorry.
You may.
Okay. Yes. So I believe we added 500 to the material. We asked for 4,000 or whatever. So we have like 500 more. So it anticipates for inflation, especially for our polos now that they almost hit 1K. So hopefully they do. Not all caucuses have had events, and we don't expect all of them to because of change in leadership. The legislative branch is extremely fluid, as you may know. So not every single caucus is going to have an event. So it's a little bit difficult to anticipate how much money is going to be spent. That's why it was like on a first come, first served basis, but mostly the 500 was accounted for inflation and less of adding another caucus because weren't really expecting that. And we also don't know if military and veterans caucus is going to be permanent unless the body implements that, of course.
Comptroller Kane.
Can I motion to move on to bill language?
You are not a voting member, unfortunately. So no.
A follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Do you believe that the money that caucuses will pull is still a first come, first served basis?
That depends on the D&I coordinator. So last year, Black Caucus was the only caucus that was holding events. So the D&I coordinator basically probably used the same amount of money they used for the caucuses now to fund the previous Black Caucuses events. So honestly, it depends on the executive branch, and the executive branch has been extremely generous to our branch using their funds. So hopefully the next presidential vice president and the president and the vice president and their cabinet is just as generous as them. But there's been a pattern of collaboration since I've been here personally.
Are there any other hands? Go ahead.
For Nets of the Connection, Shane, could you elaborate a little bit more on like what they do? I know you mentioned like the numbers had gone down, but I still want to understand like what they like what they do and like what it is.
So Knights of the Connection are what we used to refer to as our regional campuses. So we have students that are on a variety of campuses. We have them at, and Chantel can probably list them better than I can. We have them in Cocoa, Daytona, Lake Mary, Sanford, Altamont, Claremont, South Lake, Valencia East and Valencia West, and Osceola. And so we have students that are there that we work to provide several different services to them, depending on the need of that campus can be very different. A lot of it is we do provide the same free printing that students get here, which is a huge service that they want. We do provide some programming.
Shane, turn on your mic, please. I'm sorry.
Sorry, hopefully you all heard me and I don't have to repeat myself, and I'm sorry to the live stream folks. But their numbers have been changing and kind of dwindling as the university's kind of direction with some of the online classes have gone. And so that budget we've slowly looked at and reduced. Like we used to have student staff there. We don't have student staff there, so we work with our partners in there to provide some of those programs to students. And so I am confident that if you wanted to trim it a little bit, like that 1,500 or whatever, that we would still be able to operate and provide those services as we continue to reevaluate that program. I wouldn't want to take it away because we don't want students who are on those campuses to not have services too, just like students here do.
Go ahead.
So as you just mentioned, like the 1,500, that would still ensure if like the hypothetical, if we were like there was a motion to remove that 1,500, that would still allow like the services to still function to like a good full capabilities to the students we have at those campuses.
Yes, I wouldn't be offering it up if I didn't believe that we would still be able to accomplish what we need to.
Just clarifying. Follow up to the speaker.
Go ahead.
Would the like what I this is like a reason why I'm like asking this. I think I do believe in collaboration, but I do believe that the caucuses should still have their sole money to pull from. Would a 1,500 increase to sort of wherever the fund we pull the caucuses from be beneficial and ensure that we don't do a first come first served basis type deal?
Honestly, if we did have 1,500, honestly, the caucuses probably wouldn't have to even ask the D&I coordinator, but I don't think we need 1,500. You know,
I will.
it's a little too much.
Yeah, caution that we need to make sure that we're doing reasonable amounts, not just throwing money. Yeah. Pro Temptor Marlo.
I also want to add that since we're in the room, it's very easy to think about what we would need for our budget, but also think about it like if any other entity was there, $1,500 would go a long way for each one of them. So when we're thinking about moving stuff, you know, let's have some debate about what other entities might need it. MSC also does a lot of, you know, cultural events, and we partner with them for that as well. Student legal services is always important. Everyone always has complaints about the RWC, like with the amount of machinery, no offense, but there's always something else to think about. So I don't want us to kind of focus only on what Senate needs to get for their budget.
Oh, okay. Y'all and Chili.
Present voting.
So noted at 9:20 p.m. Speaker Holmes.
I would like to add the RWC was hot on last Friday. I'm not going to say anything else, but it was hot. It was hard for me to get through those squats. I'm just saying.
Just a little thing there. I believe we have money going from CITF funds for HVAC. So hopefully that could be fixed in the soon, whatever soon means, right?
Going back to the campus activities board thing, the comedy and concerts lines, there's no change in their budget from last year. We didn't adjust for inflation or anything for those numbers.
So what I'll say is it's not that we neglected to adjust from inflation. It's more of money to adjust with inflation was not there, and we did other things. So yeah, if you'll see comedy and concert, and those lines are a little bit more involved because the like 80 to 90% of that fund is talent, paying the talent. And it's not like we can put in $1,000 or $2,000 and that'll make any difference, because, you know, we're talking about big names, people. They want maybe a $10,000 would be like something, but that's where it's like we could put in for a little bit of production, but most of that money is for those. So we can't really.
I'm just asking for clarification, not trying to give them more money. Just want to understand why we didn't give them more.
Yeah.
Perfect understanding.
Yeah.
Got it.
Just.
I think she actually walked out, but I think Senator Lopez does do stuff with homecoming, and she just had mentioned that they're like kind of like the bare minimum. I do want to ask her like what would be beneficial, because, you know, just hearing that there's like some money that we could move around for some areas of these, you know, these student run boards, these areas that could, you know, benefit from even a slight amount of money. I don't know who else I could ask for other members who represent these boards where like students have come up saying, hey, I want to run this event, but I don't know if we have enough money. Like I don't know if it's like just Shane technically I have to keep asking.
We could ask, are there any agency representatives in the gallery back there? If not, I think Shane's always a good ask. You can always ask him, and he has a general idea on most things with the agencies for OSI. But before we get into that, I think I saw a hand. Did I see a hand over here? Karingle?
No, Kringle had his hand up though. Kringle had his hand up.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Kringle, did you have a hand up? Do you have a question?
If there's other questions right now, I'll let them go first.
Okay, Speaker Holmes.
It's not necessarily a question, but I do remember Court said that they on it and hit and kick me if I'm wrong, but Court was having some issues with some of their events. But I really just personally, I don't want to say I don't want to move any more money. I'm not going to say that I don't want to. If there is money there, like someone gave up money, okay, cool. But I am a little bit opposed to just being like, hey, this person, blah, blah. But if Shane's like, hey, I have 500 on me, take it. Then I'm like, okay, cool, Court, let's put some money in there, right? But if there is money, I would like to revisit Court. I know that they were having a bit of a hard time during the A&SF budget hearings previously. So yeah, so.
I agree with you. Do you have something in mind you want to move the money to? Because if not, I'm just gonna let you talk.
Are you yielding your time?
It's more like I wasn't able to go through like all of like people coming in to speak on like their behalf. I just want to make sure that if we do have the possibility of having the like, as I just mentioned, like the 1,500 there, I just want to make sure that we can still somehow help these student boards that are giving back to the student by like, hosting these events. It's not like I'm moving around just to give it to them. I want to make sure that who could possibly get like X amount of money is like, it's I just don't like the whole bare bones idea. If we could just help in any way we can, and if it's really like making sure they can pay for food or pay for like nights of the round, like the round table, like no, what was it? Yeah, round tables, the DJ people, right? Sorry.
Nights of the
turntable. My bad. These like finite amount of money that could help these agencies, to fulfill these events that I know students love to go to. I just want to make sure that they're able to do it to the fullest of capability and not, be like, oh my God, we're about to pull over and we're about to hit our cap.
I'm gonna go is this a direct follow-up? Pro Temp Demarla, did you still have something you wanted to? Noted. Go ahead.
Is this like based off when Mr. Shane said, "Oh, don't take from here, take from there"?
It was I'm gonna reference like Lopez, correct? She just had mentioned a remark to the comptroller that on homecoming they're like be using the bare amounts. I mean, she can elaborate if she wants to. It's just like someone who is on those boards. They had just made a remark that as a student like that they like looking at their budget. It's kind of like minimum amount. I just want to hear a student speak on their behalf, like, oh, this is what we do. Like a person who's actually working in there. We're senators. We have to speak to these people to figure out their issues. That's why I'm asking if Shane could speak on their behalf or someone as Senator Lopez.
Did you have? Go ahead.
Just to elaborate on that, I am part of not technically an agency, but a branch of an agency, which is Rosen Life. And because of that, I am well aware of how we kind of run things and how the other actual agencies do run things. And Shane can speak on this further. But safety cost alone for these big events, especially in main campus, takes a really big chunk of these budgets. And they have to be carefully considered. And things like, CAB, they work really hard. Court works really hard on what they do. And it's really, really impactful on outreach and students and everything like that. People want to get involved and we are there to support them. So that has to be taken into consideration as well. I'm sorry if I come off a certain way. I'm just really passionate about, I'm just really passionate about this since it is something I'm very closely related to. So.
Do you have something, Shane?
So here's what I'd say is a lot of what you're talking about are OSI student agencies that fall within my area. We constantly as a team look at where they're at and how they're doing and kind of their budgets. And because sometimes some people may need a little bit more money because of what has popped up the year or a little bit less, that the committee did an amazing job to listen to the student directors as they came in and presented and made decisions based on what the students wanted at that time. What I would say is if you just leave that money where it is, I also can, as the year goes through, look and say, if one of those agencies is struggling and I have a little bit more money left over in this area, I can work with the student body president to have that money reallocated to them during the year.
That was actually something I was about to ask. I was like, I didn't know if you could technically do that in a sense. I didn't know what the procedures were when it comes to like revisiting something like that.
Since I would be reallocating it from one, like my office area department budget, I would just have to have the student body president sign off on it and get their approval to do so. But we have done that in the past when certain areas have needed to spend a little bit more and others a little bit less.
Pro Temp Demarla.
I also agree with Sierra and Shane that the budget committee spends 3 whole days, talking to different entities on campus. And, that was the best time to get their opinion on everything. That was the best time to make adjustments, talk to them like in a conversation. Where should we move this money? What do you not need this money for? What do you need this money for? So I think that unless there are like something crazy that we missed during the original budget committee meetings, I would like to try and keep this as close to the budget as we had initially, just because we don't have the luxury of asking them now. And I don't want to make a decision on behalf of them when they kind of already have that mindset leaving that, they ask me all the questions we can. This is only going to be a 3-hour meeting probably, whereas they spent 18 hours or so, probably more, like talking to the budget committee one-on-one. So that's just kind of what I wanted to add, that, let's be careful making all these big decisions without everyone involved, with all the entities.
I did invite all the entities today. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of the agencies are led by students. So, they have their own lives, they have classes, they have homework, they have studies, they have all these things that they do. So that's why they probably are not able to make it. So, yeah, we did set aside that time there. So is there any motions do we have, Temple?
I guess Karen Gold's allowing me to. Seeing no further discussion on this point, I suppose we should move to see the proviso language.
So before we move on to the proviso language, we're going to vote on this. We're going to approve the budget. So I suppose we've talked a lot about operational. Are there any final thoughts, operational or more non-reoccurring? Kringle.
I have some more thoughts on operationals, and it actually does again have to do with uniforms.
With emotion?
With emotion, yes, it does have emotion. Okay. But I do want to just kind of clarify beforehand. We did see a lot of them. We did chat with all the entities there during the meetings, and uniforms were brought up. It was something I took a little bit of a strong point on, but I would like to actually make some motions now, at least executives. But they're requesting maybe $1,000, $1,500 in uniforms, and I know Senate survives off of a lot less. I don't think that these student executives that are also paid should be getting such lavish items. Like, I understand the need and like the want for those, but I think we can reallocate that money, even though it's not a lot. We can reallocate that money to better things.
Before you make a motion, could you elaborate more on the uniforms of what you're seeing? Because uniforms as a category doesn't necessarily mean that you're just strictly buying myself the $80 polo or whatever, right?
Of course, yeah. The main thing I see with these with the budget line items that I'm looking at are the perquisites, I think is what they're called. Whatever. So those are that is the uniform line item, but like line item itself, and that's where I'm pulling these numbers from. The only other things in that, perquisites or whatever, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, it's just like one other miscellaneous thing that I don't think anyone actually uses it for. So these are line items that are purely for uniforms.
Go ahead with what you were.
I'd like to make a motion to deduct $500 from line 22, $300 from line 37, $600 from line 54, and $200 from line 67.
Let's say that again, one at a time, so that we can get them written down. So you're going to subtract $500 from line 22.
Yes, $500 from line 22 for the campus and activities board operations.
Line 37.
$300 from line 37 for homecoming operations. $600 from line 54 for Knights of the Round Table, and $200 from line 67 for late nights.
And we are writing all these stuff down in the agenda, like the original agenda, so you'll be able to see amendments, what lines they were, how much. So for keeping track of that as well. We'll give it a second to be written down, and then I guess at this moment I'll take, are there any objections to that? Is that a motion? Or just take a minute? You want to take it?
Motion for a minute of reading time.
Okay, there's been a motion for 1 minute reading time to look at budget packets and such for this. Are there any objections to that? Seeing none, you all have 1 minute. I do highly recommend you all open up the budget packets, take looks, see what's going on with this. You guys get like a minute plus. This is a minute of reading time. Please keep a lot of conversations and noise in the chamber down, please. Thank you. Okay, 1 minute has elapsed. So that motion still stands. Is there any objection to that motion? Are these object? Just say it. Say object. Okay, there's been an objection to the motion. Vice Chair Kringle, do you withdraw your motion?
I do not.
You do not. We did not suspend pro con, did we? So I'm trying to remember. Is it go? Are we gonna vote or do we get a minute to speak? Okay, we're gonna start with the objection. You have 1 minute to state your case, starting now.
Okay, my main objection is with line 37 because it's from homecoming. It's taking $300 from an already minimal budget of $1,200. I think that's a little bit too much to take from them as they're already minimal on their budgeting. Secondly, would be $600 from line 54. That is coming from a budget of $4,100, and I think $600 is also a bit much for Knights of the Round Table taking away from them. I yield my time.
Okay, you have 1 minute now, Vice Chair Kringle. Go.
Yeah, for both those line items, the 1,200 does look pretty severe, but that 1,200 is purely uniforms in that line item. And homecoming, they have stated that they, like I see in their requests in the presentations, they don't have like those. That is a like I think what was that? Sorry, I don't have much time here. Taking that away, that much money gives them plenty of money to also use for their volunteers as well as their paid executive members. And for the other line for Knights of the Round Table, once again, actually the deduction that was already taken off was another like $750 when they originally requested like $2,500 for their uniforms or some wild amount for the amount of volunteers and other people they have. So again, it's just deducting a little bit more from that prerequisites.
Okay, so now we're going to go into voting. Remember, voting, it is going to be pro the objection, con the motion. Yes is pro, no is con when you go into voting. Yes, let's, I can say it again. So pro is the objection to the motion. So if you vote pro, we're not going to have the motion for the changes in the money. Con is against the objection, meaning that the motion will pass, and then we'll go into voting on whether or not we want to vote on that money and such. So click yes for pro, in favor of the objection, press no for con, against the objection. Voting 14 to 13 to 4, which means the objection passes, which means the motion is objected. We are now back at the beginning. Temple.
Move to vote on the spreadsheet, I suppose, for better terms.
Sure. There's been a motion to vote on the activity and service fee budget Excel sheet, or just the budget part of it. Are there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, we're there. The Excel, yes. So everything in the operational budget, everything in the non-reoccurring budget. And we are, yep, we're flat. Okay. I believe so, yes. I've been seeing them being made, yeah.
Just for clarification. Sorry. Just for clarification, is this like for the entire budget? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Are
you objecting?
Yeah, I object.
Okay, there's been an objection. Temple, are you withdrawing?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, no. So when we're voting on this Excel sheet, this is how it goes. We're going to vote on it. It's inclusive of all of it. operational and the non-reoccurring expenses. And then once that's done, I'll have you all look specifically at the budget bill, which is like your traditional bill format piece of legislation. We'll go over the proviso language. I'll explain to you all that stuff. And then we vote on that.
Can I direct a question to Vice Chair Caringle?
Yes.
With the money that you wanted to take from these different organizations, where were you planning to move them out of curiosity?
Well, I brought up a lot. Everyone else brought up a lot of different organizations that could have been using it. Now, it could go back to those same ones we deducted from. I would just like to see it deducted from the operations, specifically from that uniform line, so that it goes towards events that impact students and not just clothing items to represent them. I feel like the clothing items could be brought from nice, lavish embroidered jackets down to polos or something a little more reasonable to spend the student money on.
So I would warn against subtracting money from operational just to give it back to operational, because money is fungible, right? You can have that it's in the operations line. There's the subcategories in the budget packets, yes, but if they're not using all of that money on that uniform, they could then easily use that for something else in their operation or anything else in their budget. So I see what you're trying to do, but taking that money means now that they don't have that money to use for anything. So let's keep that in mind, and then suggestions if you wanted to make a motion. So I'm going to take primarily motions. So do we have motion? Is that a motion? Well, we haven't heard from you. So yes, go ahead.
Would it be possible for us to restrict the spending on it so that it remains in the operations, but we restrict their uniforms expenditures?
1 second. I'm getting fact checked. I think what we can do is edit the budget packets. So not necessarily a motion, but I can go into there and put like budget committee notes. I'm waiting for a response from Brody. I have Brody as my tech support. So clarification on how this works, right? We have this budget Excel spreadsheet, right? This is binding. This is like you have this is how much you get, and then this is how you're going to subcategorize it. But the budget packets go a little bit further in depth. They're not necessarily bound to those, but we give them out, and like the intent is for you to use your budget packet as a guide for how you're spending, right? To keep track, you can update it, be like, okay, we're at 500, we're at 400 out of 500 expenditure for like what we were saying in the beginning for that or something like that, right? So if we were to there's no motion we can make that says motion to stop you from using this money in your operations from uniforms, right? There's nothing like that, Vice Chair Kringle.
I do also mainly, I want to clarify, and if you can correct me here, but also taking that money out of operations and putting them in the other line items for homecoming. Like, let's say we want to give more money to the homecoming movie, or we wanted to give maybe Knights of the Round Table more money for their programming instead.
Those would be motions that would be good.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at was, maybe not, we're not going to put it right back we might put it back in the operations if that helps that one place. But I think taking the smaller amounts from the multiple agencies and then just redistributing them to one specific thing like we did with judicial would be beneficial. That's kind of what I was getting at with the other thing.
Vice Chair Morris.
A question and then a motion if my question is answered.
Sure.
Question is, Shane, have we touched the 1,500 from the Knights of the Connection yet?
No, we haven't.
Okay. With that, I motion to subtract 1,500 from line 93 and add it to line 55.
There's been a motion to deduct $1,500 from line 93 Knights of the Connection and add it to line 50 what?
55.
55 Knights of the Round Table programming. Are there any objections to that motion? What was that? Say it again. So we're going to be doing, the motion is to deduct $1,500 from line 93 and then add $1,500 to line 55 Knights of the Round Table programming. there any objections to this motion? Seeing none, we're going to vote. Vote. We're going to vote. So we need an amendment for Knights of the Round Table. My bad. Sorry. With a vote count of 24 to 3 to 4, the amendment passes. Temple?
Just double checking. All right, seeing no further hands, move to vote on the activity and service fee budget.
There's been a motion to vote on the activity and service fee budget. Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing none, we will vote. No takesy backsies this time. Let's do it. With a vote count of 26 to 2 to 2, we have approved the budget. I will now direct you all to look at Fiscal Bill 5537, because that is now where we are at. Yes.
Motion for 3-minute reading time.
Yes, there's been a motion for 3 minutes of reading time. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will have 3 minutes starting now. 3 minutes has elapsed. So you all had an opportunity to read it, but I'm also, going to go and talk a little bit about this, give some context, give some insight and such. So for the whereas clauses, all of this is essentially standard, except I did add so that, the purpose of whereas clauses is to explain, give context, things so that if you were to look back and read it, it could help you. So I put in there that we did introduce a new fund category, that being the non-recurring expenses, so that people know that this is when it started. It started 24-25 budget cycle. The purpose of the separation is to accurately reflect the reality of the difference between the funds coming in from new A&SF fees and funds coming from money unspent from previous budget cycle. Deadline, when it was dead for the budget requests, the projected for the reoccurring, which is operational, and the projected for the non-recurring, because those are now two separate. So we're going to have two. The thing about the differences is that it's projected operating, whereas, maybe this needs to be edited. I'll highlight this and then maybe we'll talk about this in a second. Projected non-recurring, but it's not actually projected. It's a hard number. We know what the non-recurring is, so it's not necessarily projected. But we'll see that later and whenever the live stream catches up to Brody. Therefore being enacted by the 55th Student Senate. Now we have our proviso language, the A through G clauses. So the first ones are typical. Those ones have been in all the budgets that we've seen. Other capital outlay purchases made of excess of 5,000 need written approval from the Senate President and Student Body President. We updated lines wherever they are. So budget line item 139, we updated the numbers to reflect because adding in the SG Ticket Center moved the budget lines. We talk about stuff there. We added in the reserve accounts because R&R now occurs in two places. It occurs in the operational and it occurs in the non-reoccurring budget. So we added that into F and also G to add in where it's contingencies for 189. And then H is the budget stabilization. So this is where we were talking about this over on Tuesday with the committee. So budget line 191, the budget stabilization shall be reserved to be allocated by future activity and service fee budget committees in the event that revenue falls below projected levels in any given fiscal year. Funds may be transferred from this budget line with the written approval of both the student body president and the Senate president. So even if we didn't have that last sentence of the Senate president and student body president, that's technically already in effect. We just put it there so that it's more explicit. People know there's no question, there's no doubting, there's no guessing. And in the case that the budget committee is not formed at the moment that we need to make the decisions. And then all unspent from both the operating and the non-reoccurring budgets shall be allocated back to the non-reoccurring, and that the funds allocated in the operating budget shall not be made available until the start of the fiscal year, starting on July 1st, 2024. That's when the fiscal year starts. But because, as I mentioned before, the non-reoccurring funds are a hard number that we know immediately. That's not something that we have to wait. We're not waiting for new funds to come in. That's just old funds. Those funds in the non-reoccurring budget shall be made available upon enactment, which means once President Cartwright signs this, the last signature, and this bill comes into effect, all the non-reoccurring funds will be made available. So for example, OSI could get their $300,000 suite renovation started before July, and they don't have to wait. And all the other agencies could use those earlier for the purposes that we allocated that for. And then, of course, the 2024 to 2025 A&SF budget bill does not establish a precedent for future funding levels of annual budgets. Each committee gets to decide that for themselves. So I think we're going to have to do a motion for the projected, because that does need to go away in that last whereas clause that I've mentioned before. But aside from that, are there any questions regarding this budget? We're going to go Holmes, Temple.
this isn't a question. Well, yeah, it is a question, but it has nothing to do with like the language. Could someone take the link from the bill and put it in the chat, because there's too many cursors on there and I can't access it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I also think I just linked the bill in the chat. Okay. Yes, Temple.
Quick question: are we doing a speech question and debate? Speech questioning debate procedure on this, or? Because
I mean, we're a little bit past that already, so we're just going to let it slide.
Fair enough. I'll defer to hers then.
For the first, therefore be enacted one for A. We don't have any OCOs in this bill or the budget. Why do we still have the line for like OCOs in the therefore be enacted? Because we don't have any in the budget.
So, two things. There is technically, it's all under the non-reoccurring. But second, as I mentioned before, money is a little fungible. So like I can use money that is allocated for my operations if I see that I don't need it for as many reams of paper, as many pens, or whatever else you were going to use that for. And you're like, well, maybe we need a new chair because, or for some other reason or something like that. And you can then do that. So that's when that case would come in. And it's always been there. That's just something. But yes, OCO is under primarily going to be funded through the non-recurring. Other questions, comments, concerns, motion?
Move to see my amendment.
I think that is your amendment, right? Yes. Okay. There's been a motion to see Chair Temple's amendment, deleting the word projected in that last whereas clause. Are there any objections? Okay, we're going to see that amendment. Do we want to do speeches, questioning, debate? I guess somebody motion, Temple.
Move for 1 minute speeches, 1 minute questioning, 1 minute debate.
Is there any objections to that motions? Okay, awesome. Good, go.
The chair said this. It needed to be removed. We know the number. I yield to questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? Richmond.
Move to debate.
With a motion to go to debate. Any objections? We're there.
May I retain?
You may.
We should
Wait,
do this.
Hold on.
Can the people in the gallery stop talking? Thank you.
Continue.
We should do this. Move to vote.
It's been a motion to vote on Chair Temple's amendment. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment. Okay, with the vote count of 31 to 0 to 1, it passes. That will be deleted momentarily. Any questions, comments, concerns, motions for this bill as a whole? Trainer.
Move to vote on fiscal bill 5537.
There's been a motion to vote on fiscal bill 5537, the 2024 to 2025 activity and service fee budget bill. Are there any objections? Seeing none, go into voting procedures. With a vote count of 32 to 0 to 0, fiscal bill 5537 passes. Thank you very much. And I just want to say we did that at the last minute before 10. We got that done in about 3 hours. Speaker Holmes, would you like me to yield back to you, or do you want me to just finish it out? Okay. With that, I yield the chair back to Speaker Holmes.
Unless you want to come back next week or the week after and yield it back. All righty. Senate Forum, Chair DeCara. Oh, wait. Let's wait for... Would you like to continue or
I'll wait.
reevaluate?
Oh, wait.
Admin, you're free to go. You're free to go. Pro Tempore.
I just wanted to give both the A&SF budget chairman and all the administration and A&SF entities that joined us today. Without them, we couldn't do this properly. So I wanted to give a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I know you'd rather be in bed too, so it means a lot to us all. You can stay there, Ryan. I'm not moving. I'm not grabbing all my stuff. That was tea. Hi, everyone. Y'all been chilly?
Can we give a standing ovation to Chair McClellan?
Yes. Ryan, have a good night. Okay. Honestly, I'm not gonna move to from where I am. I have a lot of stuff, and we don't have much time left. But I also wanted to have admin leave the room for this next one. But thank you so much. You guys look amazing, by the way. Can we just sorry, Damarla, but I just had to acknowledge the fact that everyone looks so good. Like, give yourselves a round of applause. Like, y'all ate. Y'all ate. I'll let Damarla get into the details later, but you know, not that I threatened you with statutes or anything, but you guys came with your own volition, on your own volition, Okay. I'm done being silly. Chair DeCara.
All right. Sorry. No, it's serious, and now it's even more serious. I kind of put this yesterday. Some people looked, and I know people ask questions, but now I'm going to state it in the speech. As indicated by the title, I'm talking about the speech pertains to the profound impact of our verbal interactions of the environment we create as student government agents. Each of us must comprehend the roles that we are in within student government, maintaining a standard of professionalism and exercising our utmost discretion in both our words and actions within the office. As student government agents, we have the responsibility not only of representing our peers, but also upholding a high standard of conduct and integrity. Acknowledge that our positions within student government demand commitment to professionalism, whether serving as senators, chairs, or officers. We are trusted to conduct ourselves in a manner befitting our roles. This means consistently demonstrating respect, courtesy, professionalism, whether in the confines of our office, during meetings, or unfortunately, as I've heard, in the state's capital. So this practice would be seen everywhere, no matter where you are, especially when you are wearing the name tags that say student government. While it may initially appear innocent, the repercussions of seeming harmless jokes among senators cannot be understated. Regrettably, multiple reports have been made detailing instances of inappropriate remarks or jokes overheard by office assistants, senators, and members of RSOs. It is very embarrassing to have people not in Senate come up to me reciting the inappropriate and sexual comments made around them. It is mandatory for us to exercise restraint in our interactions and to recognize that there exists a time and place for such jokes. It is disheartening to find myself delivering this, as one would expect y'all to know better by now. Moreover, it is emphasized that any further infractions will not be taken lightly and appropriately disciplinary measures will be taken, such as a censure, will be enforced as per Senate Rule 3.04C. It is my sincere hope that these individuals who have contributed to these issues, which I already know who they are, will hear this warning and take immediate steps to rectify their behavior, thereby ensuring a respectful environment for the remainder of the semester. If you have any questions or concerns, please talk to me. That's it.
Are there any questions regarding Senate forum or what Chair DeCara stated? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Damarla?
I was just gonna add to that. Just keep in mind to be respectful in the office space. It's for everyone. Whenever you make inappropriate remarks, it not only reflects on the legislative branch, but also Sierra and I. So when we have people from the state capitol letting us know of certain phrases or words being said, as well as RSOs and students that no longer feel comfortable in the comment space, it's heartbreaking. So please, try and keep a safe environment for everyone. You don't know what everyone's comfortable with speaking about in open spaces. So please keep your words in mind.
Yes. I won't go into it further. I think Chair DeCara and Pro Tempore DeMarla spoke on it well, but I will say that we've had issues with this in the past, and it's something that's really important. All you have is your name. So just be careful what you do, what you say, because again, it not only reflects back poorly on you, but myself and Pro Tempore DeMarla, and all the hard work that you do here as senators. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Are there any questions regarding Senate forum? Seeing none, sorry about that, Pro Tempore DeMarla. Senate deliberations, are any senators wishing to deliberate on a specific subject? Seeing none. I also forgot to mention, thank you all for keeping your cool during the time. You guys had straight faces. You guys are very respectful, and we don't see that a lot. And I just really appreciate that. But I just thought about that, and I just truly appreciate it. It speaks volumes about not only your behavior, but who you are as a person. So I appreciate that. Advisors report, Netta.
Hi, y'all. I was Brody today. He says, great work, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. This is a huge undertaking and incredibly important work for Senate. Congratulations. And then I said, write in your senator shout outs. Do we want to do them out loud? Okay, perfect. And I am saying, great work, all of you. Great work, all. You did that. Gonna have some cookies and pink lemonade and a craft for y'all to do in the office on Wednesday. I think Wednesday is Valentine's Day. I don't know. Let me check. Perf. It's also Ash Wednesday, so congratulations. I don't know. That's what it says in the Apple calendar. But yes, I will have some nice things in there. What did I say? Oh, I'm reading Maddie's. Because you were are special to me, and if no one has asked you yet, you can be my Valentine, and we can make little Valentines for each other on Wednesday. You matter. I'm here for you. Set up one-on-one.
What's up? Awesome job. Oh yeah, when I was a senator, I heard that A&SF meetings would go 2+ sessions, and that's just miserable. So really great job. I didn't even think it could be this fast. Keep sending me your headshots. DeCara was supposed to put a cat pic in here. He didn't. Yeah, or just upload it yourself. I'll approve it. And I love you all. Happy Valentine's Day. If you're lonely, just know I'm in your heart. Okay, bye.
Sierra. Any questions for the advisor?
Any questions for the advisors?
Sierra, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in. I'm usually not here, but I want to tell you that I have been through now 20 of these activity and service fee budget sessions. And what I'd like to do is say is that I am amazed and I am excited and I love to see you all be passionate about where your money is going to go and make that determination and take it seriously. It is a very neat process that not a lot of institutions, especially outside of the state of Florida, have that opportunity. So I actually am really proud of the work that the A&SF committee did and you as senators did in this role too. So congratulations to you all. This is a great opportunity for you all to be able to add something more to your resume to say that you helped allocate over a $24 million budget. So congratulations to you all.
Are there any questions for Shane? Seeing none. Miscellaneous business, none. DC would have to deal with Shane. Who?
What about the Marlin strip down?
Oh yeah. It's not in the agenda. That's Brody's fault, not mine. Sorry, Brody. Love you. Pro Tem 4.
It's okay. I'm really struggling today to pick. Everyone's a winner.
Woo! Okay. We have a little bit of time, so this is how I'm going to do it. You all have to pick a number 1 through 10. Okay. Go ahead.
5.
Okay. Hold up your number though. Hold up your number so everybody knows like not to choose that number. Vihan.
4.
Ethan. 9. 2. Adam.
I'm gonna do 10.
You guys wouldn't believe it, but Ethan won. And let me tell you something. Wait, let me tell you something. 7's my favorite number because it was my number that I played on the soccer team with when I was in high school. So that's verification that I chose that number. It's not just Ethan, but Ethan won fair and square.
And it's related to soccer. Let's go. Move to adjourn. Pending final roll call.
There's been a motion to adjourn pending final roll call. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we're now there. Is it Chair Yamachili this time? All righty.
Lazo.
Present.
Trainer.
Present.
Corelli.
Present.
Morset.
Present.
Temple.
Good evening.
Guerrero.
Present.
Blanco.
Present.
Polera.
Present.
Caringle.
Present.
Datlas.
Present.
DeCara.
Present.
Butler. Butler. Absent. Conti.
Don't count them. They're
Okay. Shanun.
Present.
Lazier. Absent. Fintel.
Present.
Hamid.
Present.
Rose.
Present.
Whitson.
Here.
Brown.
Present.
Similo. All right. Humayun. Patel. I am present. Luthra. Absent. Acosta. Absent. Lopez.
Present.
Hashimi. Duke.
Present.
Torres.
Present.
Holmes.
Present.
Hurst.
Present.
Fuchs.
Present.
Musemeyer.
Present.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Thank you. Freehafer.
Present.
Federico.
Present.
Pullman. Richmond.
Present.
Vasquez.
Present.
DeMarlo.
Here.
Mittal.
Present.
34 to 41 quorum is verified.
I hereby adjourn this meeting at 10:14 p.m. Go do homework.
It's time to win a war.
A war? Who are we going against?
You see this?
What?
Tomorrow you in conference tomorrow.